The man had just finished work and was on his way home when a thug suddenly flicked a cigarette butt at him. However, upon seeing the other guy's gangster-like face, the man simply bowed his head as if nothing had happened and walked away. Unexpectedly, the thug, looking for trouble, stepped on the gas and charged at him. The speeding car hit the man, sending him rolling onto the ground. The thug stepped out of the car and loudly demanded an apology from him. Faced with such unreasonable arrogance, the man still endured it and apologized just to get it over with. Surprisingly, pushing his luck, the thug threw a punch right at the man's face just to show off his strength to his girlfriend. However, the beaten man only suffered in silence without any sign of fighting back, but looking at his facial expression, it seemed those blows didn't cause him any pain. After returning home, Do-hoon acted as if nothing had happened. He cooked a neat meal and called his daughter, Min-ji, out to eat. However, Min-ji was at a rebellious age, so she showed annoyance at her father's overly attentive care. As a result, despite living under the same roof, the father and daughter barely spoke more than 3 sentences to each other all day. Do-hoon could never have imagined that the daughter he loved so dearly was going through a daily nightmare at school. A bullying trio, led by a blonde girl named Hae-ri, found excuses to pick on Min-ji almost every single day. Hae-ri would relentlessly mock Min-ji's clothes for smelling like old people, and then cruelly laugh at her for being a motherless child. Min-ji had angrily fought back a few times, but the only outcome was receiving even worse humiliation from Hae-ri's gang. Meanwhile, Min-ji's father had a completely opposite personality. Ever since his wife passed away, Do-hoon had raised Min-ji single-handedly from when she was very little. Time flew by. Min-ji was now an 11th grader, while Do-hoon had stepped into middle age. Currently, Do-hoon was just an ordinary bank manager. Every day, he clocked in at work, and upon returning home at night, his only joy was watching his daughter grow up. Do-hoon's life motto was to keep the peace and never get into conflicts with anyone. He absolutely wanted to avoid trouble, but it seemed fate refused to let him go. Realizing his daughter's birthday was approaching, Do-hoon suddenly recalled being harassed by the thug the night before. A wave of anxiety suddenly welled up inside him, fearing that Min-ji might also run into bad people out on the streets. Initially, Do-hoon planned to buy some self-defense items as a birthday gift for Min-ji. However, his female colleague Sang-ae timely stopped that decision. Sang-ae suggested that Do-hoon should gift Min-ji a t-shirt that was trending among teenagers. The colleague added that if Min-ji ever asked what her father had done for her in the future, Do-hoon could proudly recount spending a large sum of money to buy that shirt for his daughter. Sang-ae assured him that Min-ji would find her somewhat old-fashioned father very impressive. Feeling the advice was reasonable, Do-hoon immediately decided to buy that expensive t-shirt for his precious daughter. Upon arriving home, Do-hoon secretly hid the gift inside a drawer. He then walked to the laundry room, intending to strike up a conversation and have a heart-to-heart with Min-ji. However, Min-ji showed a nasty attitude and told Do-hoon that from now on, whoever owns the clothes should wash them themselves. Min-ji further explained that she didn't want her belongings tainted with his old person smell. That deeply hurtful remark caused Do-hoon to sadly turn his back and walk away. Do-hoon was completely unaware that Min-ji was being bullied at school. With nowhere else to relieve her stress, Min-ji ended up venting all her frustrations on her father. The next morning, Do-hoon was extremely astonished to discover that the pile of dirty dishes in the kitchen from the night before had been washed spotless by Min-ji. Despite her thoughtless words, deep down, she still loved her father very much. At school, as Min-ji was preparing to change clothes for PE class, she discovered that her sportswear had been thrown straight into the trash can by Hae-ri's gang. Min-ji had no choice but to wear her regular school uniform to the gymnasium. Fortunately, on the way there, Min-ji bumped into Nam-hoon. Nam-hoon was a popular boy whom Min-ji had been secretly crushing on for a long time. Nam-hoon took the initiative to lend Min-ji his sports jacket. This gesture instantly filled Min-ji's teenage heart with overwhelming happiness. However, Min-ji had no idea that this romantic scene had been witnessed by Hae-ri. The situation became even more ironic because Hae-ri also had feelings for Nam-hoon. For a long time, Hae-ri had considered Nam-hoon her exclusive romantic target. At the same time, Do-hoon was attending an annual gathering with his 2 old friends, Han-soo and Jin-chul. In the past, the 3 of them had lived through incredibly glorious youth days. Now, even though all 3 had become ordinary ordinary middle-aged men, just sitting together gave them endless stories to share. Just as Jin Chul was excitedly bragging about his precious daughter, a tense situation suddenly broke out at the next table. A few heavily tattooed hooligans started getting physical and picking a fight with the shop owner. Witnessing this highly offensive scene, Jin Chul instantly felt completely enraged. Jin Chul really wanted to teach those thugs a memorable lesson. Do-hoon and Han-soo hurriedly spoke up to stop Jin Chul. They advised Jin Chul to hold back because they were now just middle-aged men who had to endure injustice. Do-hoon and Han-soo feared that Jin Chul would lose his temper and make things worse. However, seeing this, the thug gang pushed even further. They splashed a pot of hot tea directly onto Jin Chul. Jin Chul gritted his teeth, desperately trying to endure it so it would pass. Yet, one of the thugs caught a glimpse of the photo of Jin Chul's daughter printed on his shirt. He immediately threw out sleazy remarks and demanded Jin Chul introduce that cute girl to him. The thug had unwittingly crossed the ultimate breaking point of a fiercely loving father. Instantly, Jin Chul's fury officially exploded. Han-soo planned to ask Do-hoon if they should intervene in the brawl. Unexpectedly, Do-hoon, terrified of getting into trouble, had silently slipped away at some point. Meanwhile, the more Jin Chul fought, the more fired up he got. Jin Chul poured all his strength into the attack, beating the hooligans until their faces were unrecognizable. Ultimately, the police had to use a stun gun to subdue an incredibly agitated Jin Chul. In another development, Min-ji brought the sports jacket back to return it to Nam-hoon. Taking this chance, Min-ji also gave Nam-hoon a carton of strawberry milk to express her gratitude. Nam-hoon was well aware of Min-ji's feelings for him, so he dropped a few flirtatious remarks in return. Unfortunately, this scene was once again witnessed by the blonde girl, Harry. The moment school ended, Harry grabbed Min-ji by the hair and dragged her into the storage room. Harry ruthlessly slapped Min-ji hard across the face twice, leaving her dazed. Harry loudly berated Min-ji, accusing her of daring to sneak around with the guy Harry had her eyes on. Min-ji was extremely resentful and explained that she was merely returning the jacket to Nam-hoon. However, Harry completely ignored those explanations. Harry kicked Min-ji squarely, sending her tumbling to the ground. Then, Harry spat out venomous words, saying she wasn't angry out of fear of losing Nam-hoon. Harry declared the reason she went crazy was the fear that Min-ji's body odor would rub off on Nam-hoon, the stench of a motherless child. Struck right at her deepest emotional wound, Min-ji lost control. Min-ji kicked Harry down and lunged forward, fiercely attacking her. Very shortly after, Do-hoon was urgently summoned to the school by the administration. This situation truly carried many bad omens, because Harry's father was Joo-hak, the chairman of a construction conglomerate. Joo-hak originally came from a background as a notorious gangster boss and was even backed by high-ranking officials. After Do-hoon arrived at the school, Min-ji sobbed and choked on her words as she recounted all the grievances of being bullied all this time. Min-ji told her father that today was the very first time she couldn't endure it anymore, which was why she decided to fight back. Min-ji placed her hopes on Do-hoon, stepping up to protect her and demand justice. Unexpectedly, her father's actions left Min-ji profoundly disappointed. Do-hoon didn't offer a single word of explanation. Instead, he dropped directly to his knees right in front of Harry's parents, bowed his head, and apologized. Do-hoon begged Harry's family to forgive Min-ji. Do-hoon even promised that he would immediately process the school transfer paperwork for his daughter. Chairman Joo-hak outwardly pretended to show tolerance. He stated that he agreed to let this incident slide because he felt Min-ji's motherless situation was quite pitiful. However, the exact moment the father and daughter left, Joo-hak immediately interrogated his people about Do-hoon's true identity. Upon learning that Do-hoon was merely an ordinary bank employee, Joo-hak immediately revealed a clear look of contempt on his face. Not stopping there, Joo-hak also delivered a stern warning to the principal. He threatened that if his daughter had to suffer any further grievances, there would be no need for this school to remain open. Meanwhile, Min-ji felt her heart turn completely cold. The world around her seemed to collapse right before her eyes. To Min-ji, her father was the only pillar of support left in this life. She thought that her father had never strived to achieve a high social status, so his child could proudly hold her head up high. Not only that, Do-hoon also appeared weak and cowardly, bowing his head to those in power. The fact that Do-hoon did not dare to speak up to protect his daughter with even a single word left Min-ji profoundly disappointed. In her anger, Min-ji declared that she would sleep over at a friend's house tonight. After that, Min-ji turned her back and walked away alone. However, on the way to her friend's house, Min-ji's phone phone suddenly received a notification. It was a message from Nam-hoon, the boy Minji had a secret crush on. Nam-hoon asked Minji to meet him at the school's back gate that evening to talk. At that same moment, Do-hoon quietly visited the columbarium where his late wife's ashes were kept. He sat there alone in a daze, only able to utter apologies to his wife for failing to take good care of their daughter. Upon returning home, Do-hoon sat waiting until midnight. His heart burned with anxiety, deeply worried for Minji's safety. Do-hoon picked up the phone to call, but Minji did not answer. By the early hours of the next morning, Minji's phone was still unreachable. Do-hoon decided to contact Minji's best friend, only to find out that his daughter had never arrived there the previous night. Feeling an ominous premonition, Do-hoon immediately rushed to the school. There, he discovered that Minji hadn't shown up for class today either. Right at this moment, Nam-hoon appeared with a face covered in bruises and cuts. Nam-hoon told Do-hoon that last night he was robbed of his mobile phone by a gang of thugs. That very group had impersonated Nam-hoon to lure Minji to the school's back gate area. Do-hoon ran frantically to the designated meeting spot. However, all that remained at the scene was a large pool of blood and a hair tie lying discarded on the ground. Do-hoon immediately recognized this hair tie as belonging to the blonde schoolgirl, Hae-ri. Do-hoon absolutely dared not imagine the horrific things that might have happened to Minji. A moment later, Hae-ri and a male accomplice sneaked back to the scene. Their clear intention was to wipe away any left-behind traces. Do-hoon bent down and picked up the hair tie. He sternly interrogated Hae-ri to find Minji's current whereabouts. The accompanying thug found this middle-aged man too annoying, so he intended to throw a punch at Do-hoon. No one could have expected that Do-hoon would dodge the attack so effortlessly. Do-hoon didn't even bother to glance at the thug once. He solely focused on interrogating Hae-ri about his daughter's whereabouts. The thug, out of sheer humiliation, turned furious. He violently ripped off his shirt, revealing a body covered in a tangled mess of tattoos. He arrogantly challenged Do-hoon to take off his shirt to fight, simultaneously threatening to strip it off himself if the man refused to cooperate. Unexpectedly, when Do-hoon's shirt was removed, a body covered in countless crisscrossing scars was revealed, leaving both Hae-ri and the thug completely terrified. Little did they know, this mild-mannered and seemingly weak middle-aged man was actually a former super agent who had defected from North Korea. After his defection, Do-hoon was secretly recruited by the South Korean intelligence agency. He had participated in numerous double-agent espionage missions. Do-hoon even took on the role of commander in an assassination operation against the supreme leader of North Korea. In order to wash his hands of it all and officially withdraw from that blood-soaked underworld years ago, Do-hoon was forced to hold his own superior at gunpoint. He had to go through immense hardship to exchange his past for the ordinary identity he holds today. However, the price Do-hoon had to pay was that his every little action was strictly monitored by the authorities. If Do-hoon were to accidentally expose his true capabilities, the peaceful life of him and his daughter would come to a complete end. For that exact reason, throughout the past years, Do-hoon preferred to swallow his pride and endure humiliation. He would rather turn himself into a punching bag for others to beat at will than ever reactivate his killer instincts. But at this present moment, when his only daughter and his entire world was facing a grim and perilous situation, those strict rules were now entirely worthless to him. Section Chief Kim slowly raised his head. The weak and cowardly expression that once dwelled in his eyes had now completely vanished. In the very next second, a true action-packed battle officially began. Before the thug could even see the attack clearly, he was severely beaten by Do-hoon, his teeth and lips smashed together in a bloody mess. Not wanting to waste another second, Do-hoon immediately used a metal chain to tightly strangle the neck of that scumbag. He fiercely interrogated him to find Minji's current location. Turning back time to 17 years ago, the North Korean Intelligence Bureau had continuously carried out assassinations, targeting 2 undercover agents and a South Korean diplomat. Immediately, the South Korean Intelligence Agency launched a fierce counterattack. They decided to dispatch their ace agent, Do-hoon, to eliminate the opposition's deputy director of intelligence. With only a single car, Do-hoon single-handedly infiltrated deep into the enemy's lair. Do-hoon chose a dark tunnel as the location to ambush the deputy director's convoy. After successfully eliminating the entire special agent escort team, Do-hoon captured the older man alive as a hostage. Following that, he stepped on the gas and sped the car out of the tunnel area. When surrounded by enemy forces from all sides, Do-hoon recklessly recklessly floored the accelerator, plunging both himself and the vehicle straight into the deep sea. The result of that action was the death of the deputy director, exactly as planned. As for Do-hoon, he naturally managed to keep his life. Do-hoon rushed back to South Korea and immediately dashed to the hospital to see his wife, who was in the middle of childbirth. Unfortunately, his wife experienced complications during delivery. The doctors were only able to save the baby, while the mother could not survive. Before taking her last breath, his wife only had time to urge Do-hoon to leave his entire past behind. She wished for him to focus on caring for and raising their daughter to adulthood. In order to withdraw from a political world filled with schemes and bloody battles, Do-hoon was forced to point a gun directly at his superior. It turned out that for a long time, those leaders had only been using Do-hoon as a tool for slaughter. Time and time again, they had made promises to allow Do-hoon to be honorably discharged. However, every single time, they quickly broke their established commitments. In this confrontation, Do-hoon was determined to go all the way. He threatened to drag everyone down to die together with him. Only then did the higher-ups agree to sign the papers, allowing Do-hoon to officially wash his hands of it all. After leaving the world of guns and bullets, Do-hoon stepped into a new battle that was equally fierce. That was becoming a full-time stay-at-home father taking care of his child. Do-hoon had to struggle immensely to learn how to care for his little baby. He always considered his daughter to be his entire vast universe. Conversely, little Minji also brought countless priceless joys to the single father. Returning to the events of the previous night, just as Nam-hoon stepped out of his cram school, he was blocked by a group led by a heavily built thug. They robbed Nam-hoon of his mobile phone. This group proceeded to impersonate Nam-hoon to send a text message asking Minji to meet at the school's back gate area. When Minji arrived at the meeting point, she didn't see Nam-hoon anywhere. Instead, Harry had brought a group of people there to carry out an act of revenge. Being continuously insulted and beaten by the blonde schoolgirl, Minji could no longer endure it. She immediately launched a fierce counterattack. No one expected that Minji had inherited fighting instincts from her father. She fought back, forcing Harry to suffer a crushing defeat. Seeing his girlfriend losing the upper hand, the large thug jumped in and attacked Minji ruthlessly. As for Hairi, after suffering such a humiliating defeat, she seemed to go insane. Hairi impulsively picked up a brick and smashed it directly into Minji's head. Script translation continued. Only when fresh blood spilled freely across the ground and Minji lay completely motionless did this group of teenagers begin to feel fear. They intended to take out their phones to call for an ambulance. However, the heavily built thug was quick to confiscate all communication devices. He even threw out a threat that everyone present here was an accomplice. In order to help his girlfriend escape the punishment of the law, he immediately called Oh Min-chul. Oh Min-chul was inherently a professional debt collector belonging to the Gold Tooth Gang. The thug asked Oh Min-chul how to dispose of Minji's body. However, this matter accidentally fell into the ears of a gang boss with a scar on his face. Upon learning that Hairi was the precious daughter of Chairman Ju Hak of the construction corporation, the scarred boss proactively stepped up to take on the task of disposing of the body. No one knew what scheme this man was brewing in his head. After directly tossing Minji into the trunk of a car, the boss gave Hairi a guarantee. He affirmed that they would handle throwing the body into the sea very cleanly and highly professionally. He also didn't forget to instruct Hairi absolutely not to disclose any information about this incident to her chairman father. Returning to the present moment, Do-hoon was still using the chain to tightly strangle the large thug's neck to conduct his interrogation. The thug proved to be extremely slippery. He refused to confess the truth and instead lied that Minji had tripped and fallen on her own while trying to run away. He further confessed that he himself had called Oh Min-chul to ask for help handling the scene. He affirmed that since that moment, he had no further information whatsoever. After the interrogation and grasping crucial clues, Do-hoon returned home to change into a neat outfit. He carried a suitcase fully loaded with heavy combat equipment and weapons. After that, Do-hoon headed straight to the hideout of the gang led by Oh Min-chul. At this time, Oh Min-chul and his accomplices were in the process of dealing with a man who had borrowed money but was unable to pay it back. To deduct that debt, this cruel group was planning a surgery to harvest body parts from the unfortunate daughter of that man. Fortunately, right as they were about to execute that barbaric act, Do-hoon charged inside just in time. Seeing a young girl around his daughter's age, almost having her body violated, made Do-hoon's rage peak even higher. He struck out more decisively and forcefully with the goal of completely wiping out that wicked group. The leader, Oh Min-chul, immediately sniffed out the imminent danger. He quickly found a way to flee. Unexpectedly, the moment he stepped outside, Oh Min-chul instantly fell into a trap Do-hoon had laid out in advance. Before he could even clearly understand the true identity of this terrifying man, Oh Min-chul had had to take the full brunt of an extremely powerful punch directly to his face. Meanwhile, Do-hoon's two best friends were still being held in custody by the authorities after the altercation that happened the previous night. The two of them were completely unaware that the incident from that day had been recorded by a passerby. Currently, that video was attracting massive attention across social media platforms. The North Korean Intelligence Bureau quickly spotted Do-hoon's figure appearing within the video. They identified Do-hoon as the target being hunted at the highest level. The Director General of the Intelligence Bureau harbored a profoundly deep hatred for Do-hoon from 17 years ago. He wanted nothing more than to immediately issue an order for assassins to go and eliminate Do-hoon right away. However, the rest of the high-ranking leaders unanimously voiced their opposition to this decision. The reason was due to a highly important inter-Korean negotiation that was about to take place. Instead of carrying out a bloody assassination that could cause a massive shockwave, they reached a decision to plant an elite spy to accompany the diplomatic delegation. The purpose of this action was to proceed with arresting Do-hoon as smoothly and secretly as possible. Yet, the Director General fully understood Do-hoon's true capabilities. Therefore, he placed absolutely no trust in the group of spies being dispatched. He knew for certain that no one would be capable of capturing Do-hoon alive. The only exception was perhaps a legendary figure bearing the codename Number 66. This man was considered the greatest monster in the entire history of Northern intelligence. He once had the ability to single-handedly wipe out a whole South Korean commando platoon. Sadly, this trump card had died following Do-hoon's betrayal many years ago. But the Director General suddenly remembered that the man still had a younger biological brother. This younger brother was also an incredibly terrifying spy, not in the least inferior to his older brother. Realizing that this young man harbored a deep-seated grudge over the death of his brother, the Director General decided to use him. He wanted to borrow this young man's hands to eliminate the traitor named Do-hoon. On the other side of the battle line, Director Kang Guk-chol, working at the South Korean Special Forces Bureau, was also feeling an immense headache. The cause stemmed from an emergency report related to Kim Do-hoon. The North Korean side had sent an official arrest warrant through the hotline system. They demanded to send agents directly over to carry out the arrest. The current situation was truly like a dilemma. The reason being that the South Korean government had historically always denied the existence of Agent Kim. Not wanting a dangerous figure like Do-hoon to fall into the hands of the enemy faction, Director Kang Guk-chol decided to dispatch personnel to approach Do-hoon one step ahead. At this same time, Do-hoon was busy interrogating the scumbag Oh Min-chul. However, despite being beaten excruciatingly by Do-hoon, Oh Min-chul stubbornly refused to utter a single word. Not only that, he even loudly threatened to sue Do-hoon in court on charges of assaulting another person. As it turned out, Oh Min-chul dared to act so arrogantly because he was still a minor. He believed that no matter what crime he committed, he would not be prosecuted by the law. However, talking about the law to a father in the state of losing his child was a completely useless endeavor. Do-hoon coldly drew a gun equipped with a silencer. He immediately fired a bullet straight into Oh Min-chul's leg. Do-hoon threatened the young man that he was only letting him live because he believed his daughter was still alive. Do-hoon further declared that if anything were to happen to Min-ji, Oh Min-chul's entire family would have to pay the price with their lives. Right at that moment, Oh Min-chul's phone suddenly received a text message. The boss had ordered him to quickly silence all the underlings regarding the incident that happened yesterday. Do-hoon immediately operated the phone quickly to call that number back. However, the person on the other end firmly remained silent. It turned out that they had astutely noticed signs of instability. The scarred boss instantly issued an order to wipe all content in the group chat. He even carefully threw the phone straight down the sewer drain to cut off any clues that could be investigated. Upon reading the text message mentioning the disposal of a certain body, Do-hoon's heart seemed to sink deep into a layer of cold ice. Oh Min-chul ceaselessly swore oaths. He explained that once the online chat room had been deleted, he himself was entirely unable to find a way to contact that boss again. In a state of utter despair, Do-hoon prepared to strike and end the life of that scumbag. Right at this exact moment, the police force unexpectedly raided the scene. In another development, the girl named Haeri was in a state of sitting and standing uneasily. She was incredibly worried about the body potentially being discovered by someone else. At the same time, Haeri also felt terrified at the prospect of being sought out by Min-ji's assassin father for revenge for his daughter. While Haeri was pretending to be sick and staying holed up inside her bedroom, bedroom, her chairman father returned home from work. When Harry spoke up to probe about what kind of job Minji's father did, the chairman immediately took that opportunity to teach his daughter a lesson with extremely toxic ideology. He advised Harry that she must never accept submissiveness. He emphasized the necessity of making others pay back many times over for what they had done. Ju-Hak also added that one must make enemies feel so terrified that their limbs go weak whenever they see you. Meanwhile, the scarred boss was proceeding to clearly explain the reason to his underlings. He answered the question of why he himself hadn't taken this opportunity to carry out an extortion act against Harry. As it turned out, the scarred boss understood very well that Chairman Ju-Hak, namely Harry's father, was an incredibly terrifying figure. He had originally come from the underworld, specializing in contract killing. After that, he had climbed up step by step and taken over a series of different construction companies. Ju-Hak currently held in his hands a team of mercenaries consisting entirely of professional ex-special forces operatives. This mercenary army is always ready to use violence at the most ruthless level to punish anyone who dares to interfere with his construction progress. While these events were unfolding, Do-hoon was taken to the police headquarters by the police force. He was completely unaware that an assassin from North Korea had crossed the border into South Korea with a single mission: to eliminate him. That assassin was none other than the biological younger brother of the legendary spy codenamed Number 66. The Director General had deliberately fed this young man false information. He lied, claiming that the young man's brother was stabbed in the back and murdered by Do-hoon himself. Afterwards, the Director General officially bestowed upon the young man the legendary codename Number 66. He assigned the young man a crucial mission to travel down to the south to annihilate the traitor named Do-hoon. The new Agent 66 infiltrated South Korea via the sea route. Not long after, he officially set foot in the city of Seoul. An undercover sleeper agent directly handed over a car to this young man. The spy also provided the address of the police station where Do-hoon's two old friends were being held by the authorities. Right when Jin Chul was loudly demanding to be provided with food, a delivery man suddenly appeared. The one disguised as a delivery man was none other than the North Korean spy. He asked point blank about Do-hoon's current location. At first, Jin Chul feigned an innocent tone and rambled about nonsensical things. However, when the spy pulled out a gun to threaten him, Jin Chul hastily confessed all the detailed information regarding Do-hoon's home address. As soon as the assassin's figure disappeared from sight, Jin Chul consecutively punched his cellmate several times. This action caused the man to clutch his stomach and writhe in agony. Following that, Jin Chul loudly shouted that someone was having a seizure and about to die. Taking advantage of the moment the police rushed to open the cell door to check, Jin Chul immediately dashed outside as fast as the wind. Meanwhile, the Gold Tooth Gang was dealing with a stubborn citizen who refused to relocate. After successfully forcing that man to sign the agreement paper, the scarred boss looked extremely smug. He sat and re-listened to an audio recording of his conversation with the young lady, Hae-ri. This recording had been sophisticatedly spliced and edited. In that audio clip, Hae-ri was heard confessing to taking someone else's life. She also expressed her desire to hire the boss to dispose of the body for her. On the flip side, the boss explicitly expressed his refusal. As it turned out, this group had not yet disposed of the body as promised. They still left the victim untouched inside the trunk of the car. That entire group was completely unaware that Minji was still maintaining a faint, shallow breath at this moment. While all these events were unfolding, Do-hoon adamantly refused to utter half a word of confession to the police force. When the officers proceeded to take Do-hoon's fingerprints to search the database, the system unexpectedly announced that access was denied. It turned out that all of Do-hoon's personal information was classified at an extremely high level of security. This left the local police force feeling entirely helpless. Right at that moment, Do-hoon's mobile phone suddenly rang. The text displayed on the screen showed that the caller was none other than his daughter. Just seeing the incoming call signal from his daughter, Do-hoon swiftly took down the entire squad of police officers in an incredibly short span of time. Afterward, Do-hoon lunged for the phone and spoke with a voice full of trembling emotion. Do-hoon asked the person on the other end of the line if it was his daughter. He softly called out Minji's name in anticipation. Flashing back to 5 months ago. That day, Minji suddenly took the initiative to cook for her father. She even thoughtfully asked about his day day and gave him a massage. Seeing this sudden act of filial piety, Do-hun immediately guessed his daughter wanted to ask for money. Sure enough, Min-ji gently asked her father to buy her a new phone. She had been using her current phone for 3 years, and bringing an old phone to class made her feel embarrassed in front of her friends. However, Do-hun didn't want his daughter to pick up materialistic habits. He told her he would only buy a new one when the old one broke. He himself was also using a very old phone. At that, Min-ji stormed off to her room in a huff. But the next day, coming home from school, she was extremely surprised to find a brand new phone placed on the table. It turned out that while Do-hun was strict on the outside, he actually always spoiled his daughter. Back to the present, Do-hun snatched the phone from the police officer's hand to answer his daughter's call. However, before he could hear a sound, the other end hung up, followed by a notification that the subscriber's phone was turned off. Furious, Do-hun punched a dent into the iron locker and stormed off resentfully. Meanwhile, at the South Korean Special Task Force Agency, Director Kang received a report about a background check request on Do-hun from the police station. At the same time, Do-hun's female colleague, San-ah, received a mysterious phone call. Her demeanor changed completely. She immediately gathered her clothes and left the office in a rush. In another development, Chairman Ju noticed his daughter's unusual behavior, so he ordered his subordinates to investigate. As a result, he discovered text messages between Hai-ri and the big guy, discussing plans to teach Min-ji a lesson and deal with the aftermath. Meanwhile, the North Korean spy tracked down Do-hun's house. However, he didn't find his target and instead ran into Jin Chon. Despite his large, seemingly harmless physique, Jin Chon was actually a combat expert. He skillfully dodged the bullets, then swung his arm to knock the gun out of his opponent's hand. The spy was beaten to a pulp and nearly lost his life. Fortunately, he managed to pick up his dropped gun from the floor, giving him the chance to retreat safely. With his oversized body, Jin Chon knew chasing after him would be useless, so he ran to report the critical situation to Do-hun. Meanwhile, a man who had been hiding all along finally appeared. It was Mr. Lim, Do-hun's nosy neighbor. It turned out this man was a spy planted by Director Kang to monitor Do-hun's every move. Thanks to Lim's report over the phone, Director Kang learned that the North Korean agent was hunting Do-hun down. Kang's subordinates tracked Do-hun's phone location. The results showed he was at a children's martial arts dojo. It turned out this was the facility of Han Soo, his close friend. Han Soo's background was also outstanding. He was a 3-time world champion. After retiring, he was recruited by the government. He, along with Do-hun and Jin Chon, once formed a special task force that infiltrated the north. Do-hun came to the dojo and explained everything to Han Soo. He knew the special task force was using GPS to hunt him down, but he couldn't throw away his phone because it was the only way to wait for his daughter's call. Before the two could discuss their next plan, Director Kang stormed in with his troops. Kang loudly threatened Han Soo, forbidding him from harboring Do-hun or interfering in the matter. This time, Do-hun had to be arrested for exposing his identity to the north. Without needing prior discussion, Do-hun and Han Soo struck simultaneously. Very quickly, they took down the special task force agents. The two coordinated flawlessly. Do-hun shot and pierced the fire extinguisher in Kang's hand, causing thick smoke to spray everywhere. Seizing the opportunity, the two men dashed straight outside. They fired continuously, preventing Kang's forces from pursuing them. Thanks to this teamwork, they rappelled to the ground and successfully escaped. As soon as they shook off their pursuers, the two immediately stole a utility vehicle to go find Min-ji. While they hadn't yet found the girl's location, Jin Chon called to report his encounter with the North Korean assassin. Worried for Min-ji's safety, Jin Chon intended to go to her school to pick her up. However, Han Soo informed him that Min-ji was missing. Right at that moment, Han Soo found Min-ji's location. She was in an isolated area. The three men agreed to rendezvous at that location. In another development, Chairman Ju's men went straight to the big guy's house to interrogate him about the incident between him, Hai-ri, and Min-ji. They also handed him a sum of money to keep his mouth shut. However, the big guy complained that the amount was too little. To extort more money, he revealed that Min-ji's father was no ordinary man. Do-hun's body was covered in terrifying scars and bullet wounds. Hearing his men report the situation, Chairman Ju immediately ordered them to erase all evidence related to his daughter. As a result, the big guy was killed immediately. At the same time, the North Korean spy arrived at Min-ji's school. As he walked through the gate, he saw a male student being bullied by a gang of thugs. Coincidentally, this boy was Min-ji's classmate. After being rescued by the spy, the boy revealed that Min-ji was currently suspended from school. He said the spy could find Min-ji's best friend and use the phone's GPS function to track her down. At this very moment, female colleague Sang-ah was pressuring Min-ji's homeroom teacher to extract information, but the teacher, afraid of trouble, absolutely refused to disclose anything. At this point, Sang-ah's true identity was also also revealed. She was not an ordinary bank clerk, but a spy planted by Director Kang to monitor Do-hun, exactly like neighbor Lim. Meanwhile, the North Korean assassin quickly captured Minji's best friend, forcing the schoolgirl to use her phone's GPS to find Minji's location. In another development, Chairman Ju was tipped off by an assemblyman about a massive construction project about to enter negotiations, the North-South Free Trade Zone project. To monopolize this lucrative project, Chairman Ju bluntly declared he would use money to bribe those in power, and for those who refused the money, he would take their lives. Returning to Hai-Ri's situation, Chairman Ju's subordinates reported that Minji's father was searching for his missing daughter. More notably, this man's background was classified as top secret. Meanwhile, Do-hun and Han-soo stormed into a nightclub where Minji's phone GPS was emitting a signal. The thugs, seeing the two men walk in, showed a contemptuous attitude. Do-hun didn't say much. He grabbed the head of a guy, claiming to be the boss there. He yanked the man's hair hard as a warning, terrifying the others. Seeing that no one knew his daughter's whereabouts, he grabbed the guy by the collar and forced him to lead the way to the real boss. The terrified thugs didn't dare utter a word. Once Do-hun was out of sight, they tried to chase after him to stop him, but Han-soo immediately stepped up to teach them a lesson. Meanwhile, Do-hun was blocked by a young man. This young man trained in martial arts, so he thought he could defeat Do-hun. However, before he could even throw a punch, Do-hun took him down swiftly. Finally, Do-hun entered the real boss's room. The armed henchmen rushed forward to attack him, but in the end they were all easily defeated by Do-hun. Spotting Minji's phone in the boss's pocket, Do-hun interrogated him about where he got it. Seeing the terrifying man in front of him, this guy still had the nerve to say he had done something depraved to the girl last night. Infuriated, Do-hun lunged at him, beating him to a pulp. Seeing this, Han-soo had to jump in and pull him off, fearing that if Do-hun beat him to death, they wouldn't be able to extract any information. At this point, the boss finally confessed the truth. He had bought the phone from a homeless person at the train station. Initially, he wanted to unlock the phone to see if there were any explicit photos, but there were no pictures on the device, and the poor girl's call history only contained two contacts, her father and her best friend. He added that upon reading the text messages, he realized this best friend was constantly using Minji just to borrow money and stuff. The previous call to Do-hun's phone was just him pressing the button by mistake. Do-hun was deeply heartbroken, realizing how negligent he had been all this time. He had no idea his daughter was this lonely. At school, Minji didn't have a true best friend, and she was constantly bullied by Hai-Ri's clique. Yet, at that time, he didn't stand up to protect her. Instead, he even forced her to transfer schools. Seeing Do-hun drowning in regret, Han-soo reminded him that the most urgent thing right now was to find Minji. Only then would he have the chance to apologize to her. However, before the two men could act, the North Korean spy appeared. He called Do-hun a fake Agent 66. Flashing back to nearly 30 years ago, Do-hun was then still a North Korean boy living in an orphanage. One day, a commander named R appeared to recruit the most physically fit children. Do-hun immediately raised his hand to volunteer first, as his only thought was getting enough to eat. Unexpectedly, Commander R's selection method was throwing all the children into a battle to the death. As a result, a boy named Park Dong-kwang was the last one standing and got selected. As for Do-hun, although beaten black and blue, thanks to his resilience and refusal to give up, he was also chosen by Commander R. However, the moment they set foot in the camp, the children discovered the truth. Commander R declared this was a spy training facility for a special operations unit with the ultimate goal of assassinating South Korean leaders. From then on, their days of living in a harsh environment officially began. The rule here was extremely simple: either survive to become a spy or die. The first thing was that their entire identities were erased. Instead, each person was issued a code number. Park Dong-kwang received the ID number 66, while Do-hun received number 73. Every day, the children were trained at a terrifying intensity. Anyone failing to meet expectations would be severely punished. The training schedule was incredibly rigorous, encompassing physical conditioning, close-quarters combat, and marksmanship. In this environment, Park Dong-kwang was the absolute best. Even though Dong-kwang treated Do-hun very well, Do-hun always felt envious and constantly looked for excuses to pick fights. As time went on, Commander R's training exercises became increasingly ruthless. One night, the trainees were ambushed to test their vigilance. Those who failed the test all paid with their lives. It didn't stop there. They were also forced to use guns to execute prisoners to get accustomed to taking human lives. After a long period of brutal training, Dong-kwang and Do-hun became emotionless combat machines, ready to take the life of anyone. Later, both became top North Korean spies. During a crucial mission, they were tasked tasked with crossing the border into South Korea to assassinate a high-ranking official. Initially, everything went very smoothly. The target's bodyguard details suddenly left their posts. Seizing the opportunity, the spy team stealthily infiltrated the area and gunned down the target. However, Agent 66 noticed something amiss, so he moved closer to check, discovering that the target they had just shot was merely a mannequin. Clearly, this was a trap. Instantly, a time bomb on the mannequin detonated, claiming the life of Agent 66. Do-hun was lucky to survive, but he fell into the hands of the South Korean government. It was precisely because of this failed mission that back home, Commander R convicted Do-hun as a traitor and blamed him for the death of Comrade Number 66. Back in the present, Agent 66's younger brother, Kang Song, had tracked Do-hun down to get revenge. Do-hun and Han Soo charged into the attack simultaneously. One tried to disarm him while the other knocked the opponent down. But unfortunately, the gun slid right to where the assassin had just fallen. Consequently, the two men were forced back into a highly desperate defensive position. Just as they were looking for a way to counterattack, Sang-ah and Lim suddenly burst in and subdued Kang Song, forcing him to drop his weapon and surrender. It turned out that earlier, upon leaving the school, the two had accidentally spotted Kang Song and secretly tailed him. Seeing his female colleague and his neighbor appear, Do-hun was not surprised at all, as he knew full well his superiors would send people to monitor him. Sang-ah and Lim demanded that Do-hun surrender because he had violated his agreement with the South Korean government. However, Do-hun only promised that once he saved his daughter, he would turn himself in voluntarily. With that said, ignoring the gun barrels pointing at him, he decisively turned his back and walked away. Seizing the moment the two government agents lost their focus, Kang Song suddenly snatched Sang-ah's gun and shot Lim down. Sang-ah quickly picked up a knife to counterattack. Unfortunately, in the end, she still let him escape. Right after breaking out, Kang Song hurriedly chased after Do-hun, but the two men had already managed to get in the car and speed off. Inside, Sang-ah was mourning her fallen teammate. Suddenly, Lim woke up, leaving her completely astonished. It turned out he had been wearing a bulletproof vest underneath, which was how he escaped death. Meanwhile, Do-hun had taken a bullet to the hip. The wound was bleeding severely, but his daughter's situation remained unknown. Gritting his teeth to endure the pain, he concealed his wound and bandaged it himself to stop the bleeding. Right at this moment, Jin Chon also arrived in time to regroup. The three former spies officially joined forces. The three quickly found the homeless man who had sold Min-ji's phone. This man confessed that another man had thrown the phone into a trash can, so he picked it up. He couldn't remember the person's face clearly. He only recalled that the other party had his hair tied in a bun and drove a white car. Han Soo immediately hacked into the area's surveillance camera system. He quickly spotted the white car that had parked there the night before. From that, he tracked down the identity of the person who threw the phone away. His name was Kim Sang-mon, a man with 8 prior convictions for violent crimes. The group speculated he also had accomplices. Do-hun immediately told Han Soo to track the location of the white car. Kim Sang-man was actually a subordinate of Scarface. Right now, Scarface was smugly plotting to threaten Chairman Ju with evidence of his daughter's crime. While eating, a henchman accidentally picked up a potato and put it on Scarface's plate. This action triggered his extreme rage, causing the henchman to be brutally beaten. It turned out Scarface had a deep-seated grudge against Chairman Ju and potatoes. Flashing back to 9 years ago, Scarface was originally a debt collector under Chairman Ju. Their gang specialized in forced evictions. They used all kinds of ruthless tactics to force residents to move out. But that year, they encountered a difficult case to resolve. To break the deadlock, Chairman Ju abruptly pushed Scarface from the rooftop to the ground, nearly costing him his life. Staging this accident instantly turned the building into a hazardous zone, citing railings that were too low and walls with numerous cracks. Thanks to that ruthless plot, the apartment reconstruction project that had been delayed for years was finally approved. Scarface miraculously survived. Upon being discharged from the hospital, the first thing he did was grab a weapon and go look for Chairman Ju for revenge. He also wanted to take over the position of the gang leader and company director. Chairman Ju found out and called Scarface over to discuss a business partnership, but Scarface knew full well that Chairman Ju was the one behind the order to harm him. Infuriated, he ordered his henchmen to attack in retaliation. However, Chairman Ju and his subordinates, all highly capable fighters, defeated Scarface's gang. It was precisely from this battle that a huge scar appeared on his face. The tragedy didn't stop there. Chairman Ju even shoved a whole hot baked potato into Scarface's mouth, causing all his teeth to break. After that defeat, defeat, Scarface had to bow his head in submission to spare his own life. Also from that time, Scarface had to implant a whole set of gold dentures, and the nickname Gold Teeth was officially born. Back to the present, Gold Teeth's gang carried the sack containing Minji's body into a cold storage warehouse at the port. When discovered by a security guard, they immediately took the guard's life to silence him. As for the three men, the tracking of the white car was progressing too slowly, making them extremely anxious. Just as the process was about to complete, their car was suddenly detonated by Director Kang using an explosive device, causing the vehicle to flip over and land upside down in the middle of the road. Do-hun didn't care about his own safety. His eyes were solely focused on the computer screen that was about to power off. Fortunately, the system managed to report in time that the white car's location was at the port. At this moment, Kang stood outside and loudly demanded that Do-hun surrender. Hansu immediately stepped out to talk in order to create a distraction. Seeing Kang fire his gun, Hansu launched a very powerful kick. Although the kick missed its mark, his goal was achieved. Do-hun managed to steal Kang's car in time and sped away quickly. Hansu was quick to launch a kick that knocked the gun out of Kang's hand. Kang then pulled out a knife to continue fighting. While the two were locked in combat, Jin-chan remained perfectly still inside the car to observe. Right at this moment, heavy backup forces from the Special Task Force Agency arrived. Realizing the disadvantageous situation, Hansu lunged forward and pushed Kang into the sea. Afterward, he also jumped into the water to escape. Only then did Jin-chan step out of the car, rolling up his sleeves while counting the number of special agents. One might think he was going to attack this entire force, but in reality, he happily raised his hands to surrender. Meanwhile, Do-hun was racing against time. He drove at extremely high speeds, praying endlessly in his heart that his daughter was still alive. At the same time, inside the freezing container, the sack holding the body suddenly twitched. Minji crawled out. The girl was still alive. She shivered and cried for help in vain. Amidst the negative 30 degrees Celsius temperature, if no one came to rescue her in time, the little girl would freeze to death. It turned out Scarface intentionally didn't dispose of the body, but kept it as a bargaining chip to extort Chairman Ju. He sent a voice recording as evidence of Chairman Ju's daughter hiring him to dispose of the body. He demanded Chairman Ju come meet him in person if he didn't want his daughter to go to prison. Chairman Ju learned of the matter, but he didn't scold his daughter for breaking the law. He only blamed her for not asking him to help her handle it. To protect his daughter, he decided to pin all the blame on Scarface, turning him into the culprit who murdered Minji. Do-hun finally arrived at the port. Spotting the white car, he quickly clashed with two of Scarface's subordinates, including Kim Sang-man. Meanwhile, Scarface entered the cold storage, intending to take pictures of the body as evidence. Just as Minji was about to be discovered, Scarface received a call from Chairman Ju. He smugly made sarcastic remarks, saying Chairman Ju had raised a smart daughter. She knew how to take other people's lives and dispose of them exactly like her father. He demanded Chairman Ju bring a large sum of money to a designated location. Not wanting his daughter to serve prison time, Chairman Ju immediately assembled his forces and set off for the rendezvous point. Meanwhile, the North Korean spy was tracking the phone's GPS to find his way to the port. By this time, Scarface had discovered that Minji was still alive, while Do-hun was fiercely battling his gang of henchmen. The moment Minji cracked the door open and looked outside, her eyes immediately met those of Scarface, the gang leader. Terrified, the girl slammed the door shut and hurriedly wedged an iron bar across it to barricade herself inside. As for Scarface, he stood frozen for several seconds before realizing in shock that the girl he had always believed was dead was actually still alive. Scarface immediately tried to call his two men over for backup. However, he had no idea that Do-hun had already taken both of them down. Even so, another group of his men was rapidly heading to the scene as reinforcements. At the same time, after being beaten by Do-hun until he no longer had the strength to resist, the fat man angrily demanded to know who he was and whether Chairman Ju-hak had sent him. Under Do-hun's pressure, he was eventually forced to reveal the entire truth. He admitted that it was Hae-ri, Chairman Ju-hak's daughter, who had hired them to dispose of Minji's body. According to his statement, Minji had shown no signs of life at the time, and her body was currently being hidden inside a refrigerated warehouse. Those words left Do-hun completely stunned. His pain quickly turned into overwhelming rage. He became determined to make the entire gang pay and eventually avenge his daughter. Taking advantage of Do-hoon's distraction, the fat man attempted to launch a sneak attack. However, Do-hoon easily dodged his strike. The fat man lost his balance, fell into a power source, and was knocked unconscious on the spot. Amid the chaos, the remaining man quickly fled the scene. Elsewhere, agents from the Special Operations Bureau were escorting Jin Chul back to their base. Along the way, the convoy suddenly received a location signal from Bureau Director Kang Guk Chul. 3 vehicles immediately turned around and headed toward his position, leaving only 1 vehicle to continue transporting Jin Chul. Realizing that this was a rare opportunity, Jin Chul quietly took out the pin he had hidden in advance and used it to unlock his handcuffs. Immediately afterward, he suddenly overpowered the agents inside the vehicle before they had time to react. In the blink of an eye, Jin Chul had seized the vehicle and left the 3 agents tied up behind him. Back at the port, the man who had escaped hurriedly climbed into a vehicle and attempted to flee. Unexpectedly, Do-hoon immediately drove straight toward him and violently rammed into his vehicle. Do-hoon did not stop. He accelerated again and crashed into him a second time, leaving the other man utterly panicked. The man was lucky enough to swerve out of the way before desperately speeding off. Do-hoon immediately followed close behind. Unfortunately, his vehicle ended up driving into a dead end, causing him to temporarily lose sight of his target. Meanwhile, Scarface's men had arrived at the scene and discovered the fat man's body. Scarface immediately ordered the entire group to find the man who had just escaped, then quickly gather at the refrigerated warehouse. At that moment, Do-hoon spotted the other man's white vehicle. He immediately accelerated, cut him off, and slammed directly into the side of the vehicle. After confirming that the man was still alive, Do-hoon immediately subdued him and forced him to lead the way to the refrigerated warehouse. Elsewhere, Han-soo was struggling desperately to pull Bureau Director Kang Guk Chul out of the river and onto the shore. No one could have imagined that the head of the Special Operations Bureau did not know how to swim at all. Meanwhile, Jin Chul had already been waiting there. He confidently explained that he had carefully calculated the wind direction, the current, and the terrain, so he was certain that this was the only place where Han-soo could reach the shore. After regrouping, Han-soo and Jin Chul decided to head immediately to Myeongpo Port to support Do-hoon. Knowing that the Special Operations Bureau would soon pursue them, the two agreed to split up while also finding a way to acquire more weapons. Returning to Do-hoon, while escorting the captive to the refrigerated warehouse, he was suddenly blocked by a large group of Scarface's men. Without hesitation, Do-hoon immediately locked the captive inside a shipping container so that he could deal with the gang members freely. At the same time, inside the refrigerated warehouse, Min-ji had become so cold that her body had nearly lost all sensation. Outside the door, Scarface continuously used sweet words to manipulate the girl psychologically. He promised to set Min-ji free if she kept everything secret and did not tell anyone what had happened. However, Min-ji immediately exposed his lie. She stated that Scarface himself had killed the port security guard to silence the only witness. Min-ji understood very clearly that the moment she stepped outside, she would suffer the same fate. Unable to deceive the girl, Scarface could do nothing but wait for his men to arrive as reinforcements. Meanwhile, Do-hoon quickly took down every gang member blocking his path. After dealing with all of them, he continued escorting the captive toward the refrigerated warehouse. However, just as they stepped out of the container area, a vehicle suddenly came speeding toward them and crashed directly into the captive, knocking him down on the spot. The person who had just appeared was none other than the North Korean agent Kang Song. Without the slightest hesitation, Kang Song immediately charged at Do-hoon. The two quickly became locked in an extremely fierce confrontation. Although Do-hoon had been away from the battlefield for many years, he still completely overwhelmed his opponent. After only a few exchanges, he easily subdued Kang Song. However, Do-hoon had no intention of taking his life. He chose to spare Kang Song and advised him to return to his homeland. Yet Kang Song demanded that Do-hoon kill him, just as he had once killed his older brother. The moment he finished speaking, Kang Song charged forward again in a fit of rage. Do-hoon quickly knocked Kang Song down and sternly demanded to know why he had said that. Only then did Kang Song painfully reveal that his older brother was the agent codenamed Number 66, the man Do-hoon had supposedly betrayed and killed. Hearing this, Do-hoon immediately realized that Kang Song was Dong Kwang's younger brother. Do-hoon calmly explained the entire truth. He insisted that he had never betrayed or killed Dong Kwang. From the first day he entered the agent training camp, Do-hoon had always regarded Dong Kwang as the greatest rival he needed to surpass. The two frequently competed against each other and got into fights on more than one occasion. However, after spending years enduring brutal training courses and dangerous missions together, they gradually became each other's closest comrades. On the night before they received achieved that fateful mission, Do-hoon and Dongkwang sat together and talked for a long time. Dongkwang confided that after months of continuously enduring the harsh training, he had almost forgotten his real name, just as the organization had required. Yet strangely, he still clearly remembered that Do-hoon's family name was Kim. As he said this, Dongkwang could no longer hide his emotions. He hoped that no matter what happened, Do-hoon would never forget him, because Do-hoon was the only friend he had left in this world. If even Do-hoon forgot him, there would no longer be anyone who remembered that he had ever existed. Neither of them expected those heartfelt words to become his final farewell. The following day, while carrying out their mission, Do-hoon and Dongkwang suddenly fell into a trap that the enemy had prepared in advance. After the massive explosion, Dongkwang was still alive, but one of his legs had been severely injured. At the same time, South Korean forces quickly surrounded the entire area. Unwilling to let both of them fall into enemy hands, Do-hoon prepared to stay behind and fight to the end. However, Dongkwang immediately stopped him. Dongkwang reminded Do-hoon that they had endured hell for many years, not to die a meaningless death but to keep living. Dongkwang's final instruction to survive at all costs became Do-hoon's greatest source of motivation, helping him persevere through every hardship in the years that followed. Meanwhile, Minji was still curled up in a dark corner of the refrigerated warehouse. The girl trembled from the cold, while drowning in regret. Minji could not stop blaming herself for making her father worry and putting him in danger. Because of that, she told herself that she had to survive so she could return to Do-hoon. With that thought, Minji immediately picked up an iron bar lying nearby and prepared to find a chance to rescue herself. Just then, the gang member whom Do-hoon had rammed with his vehicle earlier also struggled back to his feet. He staggered toward the refrigerated warehouse and told Scarface that a man claiming to be Minji's father had come looking for her. The moment he heard the news, Scarface immediately pulled out a knife and rushed inside the refrigerated warehouse. He began searching every corner for Minji. As he searched, he continued using sweet words to lure the girl out of hiding. Scarface promised that if Minji came out, he would immediately let her leave. However, Minji suddenly appeared from behind and struck Scarface hard on the head with the iron bar, knocking him to the floor. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Minji immediately ran out of the refrigerated warehouse. However, the moment she escaped outside, she came face to face with another gang member. Minji did not hesitate and used the iron bar to knock him down before quickly fleeing the scene. Meanwhile, Kang Song still could not bring himself to accept Do-hoon's explanation. He charged at him once again and drove the blade straight into Do-hoon's chest. However, this time, Do-hoon did not fight back at all. He calmly told Kang Song that all of them had only ever been pawns used by their superiors and discarded whenever they were no longer needed. Do-hoon slowly revealed the entire truth that had been buried for many years. He explained that he and Dongkwang falling into the trap back then had not been an accident at all. Everything had been orchestrated by Major I. He had deliberately leaked classified information so that the South Korean side would eliminate Do-hoon's entire spy team for him. After the incident, the director of the intelligence bureau at the time was forced to take full responsibility and was removed from his position. Meanwhile, Major Ri calmly rose to an even more powerful position thanks to his own scheme. Do-hoon continued telling Kang Song that before the two brothers parted ways at the orphanage, Dongkwang had told his younger brother to do everything he could to survive. Those were also the final words Dongkwang had entrusted to Do-hoon before sacrificing his life. That was why Do-hoon did not want Kang Song to continue living in hatred or become a victim of lies once again. After saying that, Do-hoon quietly turned around and walked away through the pouring rain. For all these years, he had kept trying to survive in order to fulfill his promise to Dongkwang. Afterward, he also tried to forget the past so he could devote himself entirely to raising Minji, according to the final wish of his late wife. But now, the daughter Do-hoon loved most was caught in an uncertain life or death situation. To him, it felt as though everything had completely fallen apart. Elsewhere, Minji was still running through the maze of containers at the port, searching for a way to escape. At that moment, she suddenly saw Chairman Ju Hak's convoy entering the port area. Minji quickly recognized the man who was always by Chairman Ju Hak's side as his bodyguard. Terrified, she immediately turned around and ran in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, Do-hoon had also made his way to the refrigerated warehouse. However, even after searching the entire area, he still could not find Minji. The only thing left behind was Scarface lying unconscious on the cold floor. Right beside him was a message Minji had written. The girl had written that she was deeply sorry and extremely afraid. From those few short lines alone, Do-hoon immediately understood that his daughter was still alive. Without wasting another second, he rushed out of the refrigerated warehouse and ran throughout the port in the torrential rain. As he ran, Do Do-hoon repeatedly shouted Minji's name. He was determined to turn the entire vast port upside down and find his daughter at any cost. After searching for some time, Do-hoon finally spotted Minji trying to climb over a fence to escape the warehouse area. He immediately shouted his daughter's name until his voice turned hoarse. However, the sound of the pouring rain swallowed every other noise. Minji could not hear her father calling and continued running forward. Elsewhere, Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol finally regained consciousness after falling into the river. He was furious that the others had managed to outsmart him. However, what angered him even more was discovering that all the money available on his credit card had been completely spent. It turned out that Jin Chul had taken the opportunity to use the card to buy snow crabs and all kinds of expensive supplies. Meanwhile, Han-soo had just bought an old motorcycle from a local resident and immediately set off to support Do-hoon. At the refrigerated warehouse, Scarface flew into a rage the moment he regained consciousness. He immediately ordered all of his men to find Minji at any cost. Just then, Chairman Ju-hak's men also appeared. Ju-hak's trusted bodyguard did not bother with any pleasantries and immediately beat Scarface in front of his own men. After venting his anger, the bodyguard delivered Chairman Ju-hak's order. Ju-hak demanded that Scarface take full responsibility for every charge related to Minji's disappearance in order to protect Hae-ri. Hearing that, Scarface finally revealed that Minji was actually still alive. This information caused Ju-hak's men to immediately split up and search for Minji. They left only one man behind to deal with Scarface. However, Scarface had secretly prepared in advance. The moment the man let his guard down, Scarface immediately fought back and took him down before quickly fleeing the scene. Meanwhile, Minji had reached the main road and repeatedly waved for help at passing vehicles, hoping that someone would stop and help her. By the time Do-hoon arrived, Minji had completely disappeared. Noticing that the area was equipped with surveillance cameras, Do-hoon immediately called Sang-ae. He asked her to access the footage from the surrounding cameras and determine Minji's whereabouts. To Do-hoon, everything could only end once he found his daughter. Immediately afterward, Sang-ae reported Do-hoon's call to Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol. After hearing the entire situation, Sang-ae and the other agents all realized that Do-hoon had never intended to oppose the Special Operations Bureau. From beginning to end, his only goal had been to find and protect his daughter. However, Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol did not see it that way. He viewed Do-hoon as an extremely dangerous threat if he were allowed to continue acting freely. Therefore, Kang Guk-chol immediately ordered the entire force to search for Minji. He planned to take control of the girl and use her to force Do-hoon to surrender. After reviewing the security camera system, the agents quickly discovered that Minji had gotten into a luxury vehicle. At that moment, inside the vehicle, Minji politely thanked the person who had given her a ride before quickly falling asleep from exhaustion. The girl had no idea that she had just fallen into an even more dangerous trap than before. The owner of the vehicle was none other than Chairman Ju-hak. Seeing Minji climb into the vehicle on her own, Ju-hak could not hide his satisfaction. He believed that luck was completely on Hae-ri's side because the prey had willingly come straight to them. Meanwhile, Sang-ae decided to disobey her superior's orders. She secretly called Do-hoon and informed him that Minji had gotten into a vehicle belonging to Ju-hak Construction Group. After hearing this, Do-hoon immediately realized that his daughter had fallen into Chairman Ju-hak's hands. Just then, Han-soo also arrived on the motorcycle. Without wasting another second, Do-hoon immediately climbed onto the motorcycle with Han-soo, and the two sped off after Ju-hak's vehicle. However, Han-soo's old motorcycle was carrying two people, making it far too slow, and the distance between them and Ju-hak's convoy continued to grow. Not long afterward, the vehicle carrying Minji entered Chairman Ju-hak's mansion. Ju-hak's men took Minji away to change her clothes before leading her directly to his office. Realizing that she had fallen into the enemy's lair, Minji still tried to remain calm. She took the initiative to apologize for what had happened to Hae-ri and thanked Ju-hak for helping her. When Ju-hak asked about everything that had happened, Minji pretended that she could no longer remember clearly. She said that after waking up, she had found herself locked inside the refrigerated warehouse. The last thing Minji could remember was leaving the principal's office. Minji also said that a thug had appeared inside the refrigerated warehouse. However, she did not know who he was and had never spoken to him. Although Minji tried to pretend she had lost her memory in order to deceive him, her inexperienced performance could not fool someone like Ju-hak, who had spent many years surviving in the criminal underworld. Ju-hak stopped asking questions and bluntly stated that because Hae-ri had attacked Minji, he could never allow the girl to leave this place. Hearing this, Minji could no longer hide her fear. She burst into tears in despair. Ju-hak slowly explained that from the moment Minji pretended to be asleep in the car, he had already known that she was still awake. He then openly admitted that he would do anything to protect his daughter, regardless of whether it was right or wrong. As he spoke, he took out a syringe that had already been prepared. Juhak's plan was to stage a fake scene and make it appear as though Scarface had kidnapped Minji before the two of them disappeared together. Just as Juhak was about to act, the doorbell of the mansion suddenly rang. The person standing outside was none other than Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol, accompanied by the entire force of the Special Operations Bureau. After receiving no response from inside, Kang Guk-chol immediately ordered his men to break through the gate. He fired a warning shot and demanded that the people inside hand Minji over immediately. After being informed by his men, Juhak quickly ordered them to hide Minji somewhere else in the mansion. As for himself, he immediately called Vice Minister M for help. The moment he met Kang Guk-chol, Juhak immediately guessed that the other man was from the intelligence agency or the Special Operations Bureau. Kang Guk-chol did not beat around the bush either and directly stated that he had come to find Minji. He made it clear that he knew for certain Minji was inside the mansion. Even so, Chairman Juhak remained completely calm. Backed by powerful connections, he did not take Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol seriously at all. At the same time, Juhak's trusted bodyguard also acted extremely arrogantly. He stood alone in front of the mansion gate and openly confronted the entire Special Operations Bureau force. In just a short time, he knocked down several agents. He even kept provoking them and challenging the special forces to open fire. Because they were bound by operational regulations, the agents could not use their weapons recklessly. This left them completely on the defensive against the bodyguard's relentless attacks. As the situation inside the mansion grew increasingly tense, Do-hoon and Han-soo also arrived outside the gate. However, neither of them dared to rush in recklessly. Do-hoon understood very well that one careless move would immediately place Minji in even greater danger. Just then, Do-hoon suddenly spotted Sang-ae and Agent Lim appearing near the mansion. He immediately signaled Han-soo to separate from him and coordinate with the two of them. Meanwhile, Bureau Director Kang Guk-chol suddenly received a call from Vice Minister Im. The moment he answered, Vice Minister Im sternly ordered him to withdraw all forces from Chairman Juhak's mansion immediately. Although he was furious, Kang Guk-chol had no choice but to obey. He immediately led the force away from the mansion. However, as soon as the convoy passed through the gate, two vehicles quietly broke away from the formation and parked in a hidden location to continue monitoring every movement. As for Kang Guk-chol, he secretly regrouped with Sang-ae and Agent Lim. In fact, while Kang Guk-chol and Juhak had been confronting each other, Sang-ae and Lim had taken advantage of the chaos to secretly infiltrate the mansion. After searching for some time, they discovered a hidden room guarded extremely heavily. Sang-ae and Lim quickly subdued all the guards and rescued Minji. Immediately after getting Minji out of the mansion, Kang Guk-chol ordered that she be escorted back to the Special Operations Bureau headquarters. Minji was extremely frightened. She repeatedly asked who the people in front of her were and where they were taking her. However, no one answered. To stop Minji from continuing to resist, the agents were forced to inject her with a sedative, causing her to quickly lose consciousness. Meanwhile, Do-hoon had subdued 3 other agents and interrogated them about Minji's whereabouts. After learning that Kang Guk-chol was taking his daughter back to the Special Operations Bureau headquarters, Do-hoon immediately stole a vehicle and quickly gave chase. During the pursuit, he repeatedly used the radio to try to contact Minji. Do-hoon kept encouraging his daughter to remain calm and wait for him to rescue her. Unfortunately, Minji was still unconscious and could not hear him at all. At that moment, Kang Guk-chol spoke over the radio. Do-hoon immediately promised that as long as he could see Minji safe again, he would willingly surrender and accept any punishment. However, Kang Guk-chol did not believe Do-hoon at all. He believed that only by controlling Minji could he force Do-hoon to appear obediently. Elsewhere, Jin-chol returned to the Marine Corps Veterans Association to acquire more weapons. However, the moment he stepped inside, he froze. Jin-chol's wife had already been sitting there waiting for him. She was even holding a knife, which immediately made Jin-chol nervous. She sternly asked where he had been for the past several days, and even suspected that he had another woman outside. Hearing this, Jin-chol hurriedly tried to explain. He told her everything that had happened over the past few days, from Minji's kidnapping and Do-hoon risking his life to find his daughter, to how Jin-chol himself had been restrained by the police for helping protect Do-hoon. Jin-chol also told her that Han-soo had fallen into the river and nearly lost his life. After hearing the whole story, his wife finally softened and agreed to let Jin-chul continue helping Do-hoon. The moment his wife left, Jin-chul immediately lifted the rug on the floor and opened a hidden basement. Inside was an entire arsenal that had been stored there for many years. To Jin-chul, every weapon inside was as precious as treasure. However, because he wanted to help Do-hoon, he decided to bring every usable weapon he could carry. From grenades to heavy machine guns, Jin-chul prepared everything before setting off. Meanwhile, Min-ji had been brought back to the Special Operations Bureau headquarters. At the same time, Han-soo was secretly following the convoy. Earlier, he had secretly clung to the underside of one of the vehicles, so no one had noticed him. Thanks to that, Han-soo successfully infiltrated the Special Operations Bureau building, which was considered one of the most heavily secured facilities in South Korea. Outside, under Bureau Director Kang Guk-chul's orders, all elite tactical units were quickly mobilized to surround the headquarters. Kang Guk-chul understood very well that Do-hoon would never give up on rescuing his daughter. For that reason, he had already set up a large-scale trap and was waiting for Do-hoon to appear on his own. Seeing Kang Guk-chul mobilize nearly the entire force just to deal with one man, Sang-ah could not help but be shocked. She realized that her superior was genuinely wary of Do-hoon's abilities. In the underground parking garage, Han-soo quickly subdued an agent and took his access card. He then quietly headed toward the interrogation room area with the intention of rescuing Min-ji. However, the moment he arrived, Han-soo discovered that the corridor was being guarded extremely heavily. Special forces were stationed everywhere, making it impossible for him to approach by ordinary means. After observing for a few seconds, Han-soo quickly came up with another plan. He borrowed equipment from a cleaner and secretly crawled into the building's ventilation system. Following the ducts, Han-soo reached the technical room. There, he tied a string to a bottle of water and created a dripping system so that water would continuously fall onto the electrical equipment below. After finishing the setup, Han-soo immediately left the technical room and continued moving toward the interrogation area. At that moment, inside the interrogation room, Kang Guk-chul began questioning Min-ji. He told her the full truth about Do-hoon's identity. Kang Guk-chul said that Min-ji's father had once been a notorious spy who had lived in the shadows for many years under a false identity. According to him, Do-hoon had hidden everything solely to protect his daughter. In order to save Min-ji, he was willing to disregard every consequence and cause a series of serious incidents. Kang Guk-chul then continued asking why Chairman Ju-hak had detained Min-ji. He wanted to know what secret Do-hoon and Ju-hak were hiding. Faced with those questions, Min-ji honestly told him everything she knew. She said that Harry had struck her on the head with a brick. After waking up, she found herself locked inside the refrigerated warehouse. After hearing this, Kang Guk-chul could only smile helplessly. He had never expected that an incident involving so many agencies would have originated from a conflict between high school students. Just then, Vice Minister Im suddenly appeared at the headquarters. After receiving the report, Kang Guk-chul immediately ordered that Min-ji be moved to another location for safety. At the same time, Han-soo had just reached the interrogation room. Unfortunately, Min-ji had already been taken to an isolation room before he could arrive. The moment Vice Minister Im entered the meeting room, he immediately scolded Kang Guk-chul for deploying forces to attack Chairman Ju-hak's mansion without authorization. However, right afterward, Vice Minister Im also demanded that Kang Guk-chul hand Min-ji over to him immediately. While the two were arguing fiercely, Han-soo secretly found the isolation room where Min-ji was being held. Without missing the opportunity, he quickly helped the girl crawl into the ventilation system to escape. On the other side, the confrontation between Kang Guk-chul and Vice Minister Im also became increasingly tense. Kang Guk-chul openly accused Vice Minister Im of colluding with Ju-hak Construction Group and abusing his power to conceal numerous violations. He also warned that if Min-ji were handed over to Ju-hak, everyone involved would have to face Do-hoon's wrath. While escaping through the ventilation system with Han-soo, Min-ji could not suppress her curiosity and asked whether her father had really once been a spy. Han-soo thought for a few seconds before deciding to tell her the truth. He confirmed that Do-hoon had indeed once been a spy, but that everything was now in the past. At that exact moment, the plan Han-soo had prepared earlier began to take effect. Water from the bottle dripped onto the electrical system, causing the entire system to short-circuit. In an instant, the power throughout the entire building was cut off. The whole Special Operations Bureau headquarters was plunged into darkness. Alarm sirens immediately echoed everywhere. Taking advantage of the chaos, Hansu quickly brought Minji down to the underground parking garage. However, the moment they reached the basement, the two were surrounded from all directions by a large special forces unit. Standing at the front of the formation, Kang-guk Chol wore a confident smile. He believed that this time, he had completely taken control of the situation, and that no one could take Minji away from this place. With the situation becoming extremely dangerous, Hansu quickly told Minji that when he counted to 3, she had to run at full speed toward the emergency exit and absolutely must not look back. However, before Hansu could finish counting, Kang-guk Chol ordered the entire force to open fire at once. At the moment when all hope seemed lost, a massive explosion suddenly erupted in the middle of the parking garage. The person who appeared to rescue them was none other than Jin Chul. Carrying a grenade launcher on his shoulder, Jin Chul repeatedly fired smoke grenades and stun grenades into the Special Operations Bureau formation. In the blink of an eye, the entire basement was engulfed in thick smoke and dust, throwing the enemy formation into complete chaos. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Hansu immediately shielded Minji and led her toward Jin Chul's vehicle. While Hansu tried to get Minji to safety, Jin Chul stood alone behind them and kept firing to hold back the advancing special forces. The intense barrage created by Jin Chul prevented any agent from approaching recklessly. However, when Hansu and Minji reached the vehicle, they discovered that the doors were still locked. Hansu and Minji repeatedly tried to open them, but nothing worked. Kang-guk Chol quickly noticed something unusual. He realized that Jin Chul had fired many shots, yet the Special Operations Bureau force had suffered no casualties at all. Only then did everyone realize that all the ammunition Jin Chul had just used was training ammunition. Jin Chul had never wanted to kill the people who had once been his comrades, so he had deliberately avoided using live rounds. The moment Kang-guk Chol discovered the truth, he immediately ordered a counterattack. The special forces opened heavy fire toward the vehicle. In just a short time, the vehicle was riddled with bullet holes. In fact, Jin Chul was still carrying live ammunition. However, he could not bring himself to shoot at people who had once worn the same uniform as him. After holding out for a little longer, Jin Chul, Hansu, and Minji were all driven into a dead end. With no other choice, the three of them were forced to raise their hands and surrender. Kang-guk Chol immediately stepped forward with the intention of taking control of Minji. At that exact moment, a cold voice suddenly came from behind. The person who had just appeared was Vice Minister Im. He ordered the entire force to lower their weapons immediately. Before anyone could understand what was happening, a streak of blood slowly appeared on Vice Minister Im's neck. It turned out that someone behind him was tightening a steel wire around his throat. Immediately afterward, Do-hoon's familiar voice echoed through the silent space. Do-hoon gently called Minji's name and told her that her father had come and would take her home. That year, after his wife passed away, Do-hoon lost control and pointed a gun at the general. He forced the general to discharge him from service, just as he had promised before. At the time, Director Kang was the one who strongly opposed allowing Do-hoon to leave the service. Director Kang feared that if North Korea discovered Do-hoon was still alive, it would trigger a serious diplomatic crisis. Someone else suggested handing Agent Kim Do-hoon over to North Korea. However, Director Kang proposed eliminating Do-hoon to prevent him from becoming a potential threat to society. Fortunately, the general still chose to keep his promise and allowed Do-hoon to leave the service. Thanks to that decision, Do-hoon was finally able to live a free life. From that day on, Do-hoon devoted himself completely to raising his young daughter, Minji. Only Director Kang continued to hold on to his resentment toward Do-hoon from that year until the present day. Back in the present, Do-hoon uses the life of Vice Minister Im from the Ministry of National Security to force Director Kang and his men to lower their weapons. However, Director Kang has completely lost his mind by this point. He shows no concern for Vice Minister Im's safety and crazily orders the tactical team to open fire. Unable to stand by and watch Vice Minister Im be put in danger, the tactical team leader immediately orders every member to put down their weapons. Director Kang still refuses to give in and continues trying to fire. Jin Chul immediately raises the machine gun and fires several bursts into the wall. Jin Chul's action is meant to warn Director Kang that the gun is fully loaded with live ammunition. Taking advantage of the moment when Director Kang's men do not dare make a move, Minji runs over and hugs Do-hoon tightly from behind. After enduring countless dangers, Do-hoon and his daughter are finally reunited. Jin-chul hands the machine gun to Han-soo, then runs to the car, takes out a mine, and places it on the ground. Jin-chul claims that it is a special weapon activated by sound and movement. Jin-chul warns that if anyone dares move even a single finger, the mine will explode immediately. He even challenges anyone who is not afraid of danger to try moving. Because Jin-chul's car has been badly damaged by gunfire, Do-hoon, Han-soo, and Jin-chul temporarily take the keys to another car from the tactical team leader. Before leaving, Jin-chul also forces all of Director Kang's men to raise their hands above their heads. Only then does Jin-chul activate the mine, making everyone stand completely still, too afraid even to breathe heavily. Do-hoon, Han-soo, and Jin-chul help Min-ji into the car. They also take Vice Minister Im with them as a hostage and only drop him off on the road after the car passes through the main gate. After temporarily escaping danger, Do-hoon tells Jin-chul to drive to a restaurant. Min-ji has been starving for days and has not had a proper meal. Thinking about everything his daughter has endured over the past few days, Do-hoon feels deeply guilty. He sincerely apologizes to Min-ji for putting her through so much danger. Min-ji throws herself into her father's arms and bursts into tears. She also deeply regrets all the hurtful things she said to Do-hoon in the past. Do-hoon, Min-ji, Han-soo, and Jin-chul happily walk into the restaurant together. None of them know that Nam-hoon, Chairman Ju-hak's subordinate, is still secretly following them. At that moment, Chairman Ju-hak calls Nam-hoon. He orders Nam-hoon to capture both Do-hoon and Min-ji and bring them back at all costs. Chairman Ju-hak wants to know just how terrifying the true identity of the man who once knelt before him and begged for forgiveness really is. After eating their fill, Do-hoon, Min-ji, Han-soo, and Jin-chul get back into the car and leave. As they travel, the group chats and laughs happily together. Suddenly, several trucks rush in from different directions and surround their car. Before Do-hoon and his companions can even collect themselves, a group of well-trained men jumps out of the trucks. The men quickly drill holes into Do-hoon's car and lock it down securely. They then lift the entire car into the cargo compartment of a large truck. The enemy moves so quickly and dangerously that Do-hoon and his companions have no time to react. Do-hoon can only reassure Min-ji and tell her not to be afraid. Han-soo also warns Jin-chul not to act recklessly. However, Jin-chul believes this is the perfect moment for him to become a hero. Jin-chul opens the sunroof and climbs outside to search for a way to escape. Before he can carry out his plan, he smells an extremely strong and unfamiliar gas. Noticing that his skin is unaffected, Jin-chul guesses that it is merely some kind of anesthetic gas. He confidently boasts that he once stayed awake for an entire month, so a little anesthetic gas like this cannot possibly affect him. But immediately afterward, Jin-chul starts pounding on the car window and begs Han-soo to open the sunroof. All he wants is to get back inside the car as quickly as possible. Han-soo firmly refuses to open it and leaves Jin-chul to pass out outside. Meanwhile, Han-soo and Do-hoon try to hold their breath and use the small amount of air trapped inside water bottles to stay conscious. The truck, personally escorted by Nam-hoon, quickly heads toward a remote mountain area. There, another group of men is already waiting beside a hole prepared in advance. Nam-hoon confirms that there is no longer any movement inside the car. He immediately orders his men to take Do-hoon and Min-ji out, while Han-soo and Jin-chul are to be buried in the hole that has already been dug. Unexpectedly, the moment the truck's cargo door opens, Han-soo suddenly slams on the accelerator. He drives the car straight out of the truck's cargo compartment. The men immediately surround Do-hoon and Han-soo. Meanwhile, when Nam-hoon does not see Min-ji inside the car, he quickly jumps into the truck's cargo compartment to look for her. Fortunately, Jin-chul, who has been lying unconscious, suddenly wakes up. Taking advantage of Jin-chul's dazed state, Nam-hoon immediately attacks him and orders the driver to quickly leave the scene. Nam-hoon does not expect his attacks to have almost no effect on Jin-chul. The man with astonishing physical strength quickly gets back to his feet and counterattacks Nam-hoon. Outside, Do-hoon sees the truck suddenly start moving. He immediately leaves the remaining men for Han-soo to handle and runs up the nearby hillside. Do-hoon calculates the exact moment when the truck passes below. He leaps down and lands directly on the roof of the cargo compartment. While Jin-chul fights Nam-hoon inside, Do-hoon slowly makes his way toward the cab. He quickly takes down the driver and pulls him away from the controls. Do-hoon immediately grabs the steering wheel and takes control of the truck. Inside the cargo compartment, Jin-chul gives Nam-hoon no further chance to fight back. Nam-hoon pulls out a sharp blade and tries to attack Jin-chul. However, Jin-chul immediately bites Nam-hoon's hand and keeps beating him until he can no longer fight back. Nam-hoon has always been arrogant and frequently bullied those weaker than himself. This time, he has finally met an opponent whose strength is far beyond his own. Even after Jin-chul kicks him out of the truck, Nam-hoon still cannot understand who those men wearing glasses really are or how they possess such terrifying strength. Do-hoon drives drives the truck back to the original location to pick up Han-soo. At that moment, Han-soo has also just finished dealing with all the remaining men. After throwing Nam-hoon into the hole, Do-hoon notices the badge on his chest. It is the symbol of Ju-hak Construction Group. Do-hoon, Han-soo, and Jin-chul put Minji back into the car and quickly leave the scene. However, Do-hoon does not drive home and instead heads straight to Chairman Ju-hak's mansion. Do-hoon wants to put an end to everything himself. When they arrive, he asks Han-soo and Jin-chul to stay behind and protect Minji while he settles the private conflict between two fathers himself. Do-hoon easily defeats all the guards and storms straight into Chairman Ju-hak's room. Even now, Chairman Ju-hak remains completely calm and shows no fear at all. Chairman Ju-hak shamelessly claims that he and Do-hoon are actually the same. They are both fathers, willing to do anything to protect their children. Chairman Ju-hak offers to pay Do-hoon 100 million won every month to bribe him into becoming his subordinate. He also claims that having a child without providing that child with proper living conditions is nothing less than irresponsible behavior. According to Chairman Ju-hak, it is both a crime and an act of child abuse. Faced with Chairman Ju-hak's shameless words, Do-hoon can no longer hold himself back. He decides to punish him so that Chairman Ju-hak can no longer harm anyone else. Do-hoon immediately lands powerful punches on Chairman Ju-hak's stomach and face. In a panic, Chairman Ju-hak pulls a sword from a drawer and tries to fight back. However, in Do-hoon's eyes, Chairman Ju-hak's techniques are nothing more than clumsy movements. Chairman Ju-hak barely manages to make a few moves before Do-hoon disarms him. Do-hoon continues beating Chairman Ju-hak, leaving him seriously injured. He no longer has the strength to resist and finally realizes how enormous the difference in power between him and Do-hoon truly is. Chairman Ju-hak clutches his head and crawls out of the room in panic. Do-hoon coldly follows behind him like a judge pursuing a guilty man. In his panic, Chairman Ju-hak loses his balance and falls down the stairs. Just as Do-hoon is about to deliver the final blow, Minji suddenly calls out and stops her father. Minji does not want Do-hoon to keep hurting other people because of her. Listening to his daughter, Do-hoon decides to spare Chairman Ju-hak's life. However, Do-hoon demands that Chairman Ju-hak sincerely apologize to Minji in exchange for the chance to live. Chairman Ju-hak hurriedly kneels down and bows his head to apologize to Minji. He also begs Do-hoon to remember that they are both fathers and spare his life. Minji demands that Chairman Ju-hak take Hae-ri to the police station to turn herself in. After Do-hoon and his daughter leave the mansion, Chairman Ju-hak stares after their retreating figures in humiliation. Fierce hatred flares in Chairman Ju-hak's eyes. He silently vows that one day, Do-hoon will pay 5 or even 10 times over for everything he has suffered today. Elsewhere, Director Kang's men are still being held in place by the mine. All of them are forced to stand completely still, with their hands raised in surrender for 4 straight hours. Only when the mine suddenly lets out a loud bang do Director Kang's men realize that it is nothing more than a fake device. However, the crisis is still not truly over. The general himself has led an armed force to completely surround Do-hoon's house. Before voluntarily surrendering himself, Do-hoon goes into the kitchen and personally prepares a lavish meal for Minji. He also makes up for her missed birthday by holding a belated celebration for his beloved daughter. Do-hoon takes out the gift he did not have the chance to give Minji last time. Finally, Do-hoon confessed the truth about his real identity to his daughter. He told Minji that he had once been a spy from North Korea and had been forced to live an extremely dangerous and brutal life. Everything in Do-hoon's life changed after he met Minji's mother. Do-hoon had promised his wife that he would leave his entire past behind and live only as Minji's father. Do-hoon admitted that Minji sometimes gave him a headache. However, he was always incredibly happy to watch his daughter grow up with his own eyes. Choking back his emotions, Do-hoon told her that he and Minji would soon have to say goodbye. The father and daughter might see each other again soon, but there was also a chance they would never have another opportunity to reunite. Minji insisted that she would always wait for her father. She believed that Do-hoon would definitely return and told him that, in her heart, he was the greatest father of all. After tearfully saying goodbye to his daughter, Do-hoon stepped proudly out of the house. He raised both hands and surrendered to the armed forces before being escorted back to the Special Operations Bureau. Han-soo and Jin-chul were also arrested at the same time. While Do-hoon was being detained, Chairman Ju-hak began planning his revenge. Chairman Ju-hak went to his lawyer to have everything arranged for himself and Hae-ri. The lawyer advised him to send Hae-ri abroad immediately and have her lie low for a while to avoid attention. Right afterward, Chairman Ju-hak took out 6 golden spheres to bribe Assemblyman Sim. In return, Assemblyman Sim had to step in and smooth things over with the police. At the same time, Scarface had replaced his teeth with an entirely new set of gold teeth. He was preparing to return to the underworld after lying low for some time. Inside the solitary confinement cell, Do-hoon's eyes were tightly covered. He could only hear the footsteps of several people entering the room. They informed him that their superiors had ordered Do-hoon to be transferred somewhere else. As soon as they finished speaking, Do-hoon was injected with a powerful sedative. When he woke up, the sight before him left Do-hoon stunned for several seconds. This was not a facility belonging to South Korea's Special Operations Bureau at all. Do-hoon had secretly been taken back to North Korea. He was now tightly restrained inside a room filled with terrifying interrogation tools. An officer welcomed Agent Number 66 back home. Over the following days, Do-hoon was subjected to relentless, brutal interrogations and a barrage of questions. The officers wanted to know which commander had spared Do-hoon's life. They also wanted him to reveal the identities of those who had secretly infiltrated the North and the route he had used to cross the border. Do-hoon was repeatedly subjected to severe methods of coercive interrogation. Whenever he collapsed from exhaustion and lost consciousness, the officers found ways to wake him up so they could continue questioning him. The officer promised that Do-hoon would be able to return as a national hero. However, the condition was that he had to provide all information about South Korea's command system. The interrogations grew increasingly brutal. Even so, Do-hoon remained determined not to reveal a single piece of information. Minji's voice calling him dad echoed in Do-hoon's mind like a powerful source of strength. However, the memory of his daughter also became a pain that seemed to crush his heart. Realizing how unbreakable Do-hoon was, the officer began using Minji to threaten him. He warned that the girl could be forced to endure things even more horrifying than what Do-hoon was suffering. When Do-hoon once again lost consciousness from exhaustion, the officer intensified the coercion. He moved closer, intending to subject Do-hoon to an even stronger shock. Do-hoon had been waiting for this exact moment. He suddenly used the enemy's own device to render the officer incapable of fighting back. Do-hoon quickly freed himself and searched for a way to escape. However, the moment he stepped outside, he froze when he saw Director Kang and the South Korean Army general standing there. It turned out that the entire brutal interrogation supposedly carried out by North Korea had been nothing more than an act. Their purpose was to test Do-hoon's loyalty. The general praised Do-hoon as a man who would never betray anyone. He then explained that they had spared Do-hoon's life, not because they pitied him or cared about him. Their real purpose was simply to use Do-hoon's abilities one final time. In return, once he completed the mission, Do-hoon and Minji would be set free under entirely new identities. Do-hoon's mission this time was to protect a high-ranking North Korean official who had fled to China to seek asylum. Because an important negotiation between the two Koreas was about to take place, the South Korean side had to pretend it knew nothing about the asylum seeker's existence. Do-hoon was the ideal person to serve as the official's secret bodyguard until the negotiations were over. The Special Operations Bureau guaranteed that it would protect Minji because no matter what, she was still a South Korean citizen. Do-hoon gave them one final condition. They had to release Han-soo and Jin-chul immediately. Right afterward, the agents went to the detention cell to transfer Jin-chul. However, Jin-chul resisted violently because he feared he was being taken to a military prison. In the neighboring cell, Han-soo resisted just as fiercely. The agents were forced to use tranquilizer guns to subdue him. Han-soo protested angrily, insisting that he was not some dangerous animal that had just escaped from captivity. He then twisted and bent his body repeatedly, dodging the tranquilizer darts like a master in an action movie. However, Han-soo was eventually taken down by surprise because he was too busy showing off his skills. On the other side, the agents also had an extremely difficult time dealing with Jin-chul. Normally, a single tranquilizer dart would be enough to knock out a large bull. However, even after being hit by several darts, Jin-chul remained completely conscious. In the end, the agents had to use every last dose they had before the man with unbelievable stamina finally stayed down. When they groggily regained consciousness, Han-soo and Jin-chul discovered that they had been dumped in an extremely remote place. Both men were still tightly bound from head to toe. The agents had even deliberately thrown the key to a different spot. Han-soo had to struggle for a long time before he could free himself. Han-soo and Jin-chul walked until their legs were aching before they finally found a small grocery store where they could ask for directions. To their shock, the shop owner told them that they were in Haenam. The news left Han-soo feeling dizzy. Haenam lies at the southernmost end of the country, an extremely long distance from the capital, Seoul. To make matters worse, Han-soo and Jin-chul did not have a single coin on them. This time, the Special Operations Bureau had played an especially cruel trick on Han-soo and Jin-chul. The person behind it was none other than Director Kang. Elsewhere, Assemblyman Sim informed Chairman Ju Hak that Ju Hak Group's resort had been selected to host the North Korean delegation. When Chairman Ju Hak asked about Do-hoon and Minji's whereabouts, Assemblyman Sim told him that no records of either of them existed anywhere in the country. It seemed that Do-hoon and his daughter had been completely erased from South Korea's legal system. Meanwhile, Jin Chul finally dragged himself home after his involuntary journey on foot from the southernmost end of the country. The moment he saw the familiar outline of his house, Jin Chul became so emotional that he nearly burst into tears. He kept thanking heaven that he was still alive and had managed to return home. Jin Chul expected his wife and daughter to welcome him warmly after he had been gone for so many days. To his surprise, his daughter did not even know when her father had left the house. Jin Chul's wife instead complained that he smelled terrible. She immediately ordered her husband to go take a proper shower. Meanwhile, in international waters, two boats drew close together to transfer the asylum seeker. Do-hoon was already waiting at the port and began his mission to protect the important figure. To his surprise, the asylum seeker was none other than Director General Ri of North Korea's Reconnaissance General Bureau. Director General Ri greeted Do-hoon by his code name, number 66. He also mentioned that Do-hoon had previously carried the number 73. Director General Ri revealed that he was the one who had asked South Korea to assign Do-hoon to protect him. The reason was that he trusted only the abilities of the man once regarded as the greatest warrior. A few days earlier in Pyongyang, North Korean officials had been arguing fiercely over whether to send assassins after the traitor. A shocking truth from 25 years earlier had also been brought back to light. Do-hoon's unit had once been completely wiped out while carrying out a mission to infiltrate South Korea. It was suspected that the cause was a secret mole who had leaked the information. The person under suspicion was none other than Director General Ri. Only a few days later, Director General Ri was arrested on charges of treason. However, he seemed to have anticipated that this day would come. Director General Ri quickly used a gun to take down the soldiers who came to arrest him. He then contacted South Korea and requested asylum. Back in the present, Director General Ri boasted that he possessed information about North Korea's ballistic missile system. He demanded that Do-hoon escort him with the utmost care. Director General Ri believed that he was now an important figure whom South Korea would treat with great respect. Although his heart was filled with rage, Do-hoon had to suppress his emotions and escort Director General Ri to the safe house. At the same time, Minji was being protected by personnel from the Special Operations Bureau. She anxiously asked where her father was and how he was doing. Director Kang refused to reveal any classified information. He only reassured Minji that Do-hoon was still alive. According to Director Kang, when Minji would be able to see her father again depended entirely on Do-hoon's abilities. Back at Director General Ri's hideout, Do-hoon inspected the entire house and the surrounding area to ensure everything was secure. Meanwhile, Director General Ri leisurely took a shower and rested. It turned out that before coming to South Korea to seek asylum, he had secretly implanted a memory card containing classified information into his upper arm. After finishing his shower, Director General Ri immediately announced that he wanted to sleep. He also warned Do-hoon not to wake him under any circumstances. Remembering how Director General Ri had once set a trap that caused all of his comrades to die, Do-hoon was plunged into a fierce inner conflict. One part of Do-hoon wanted to complete the mission so he could reunite with his daughter. The other part wanted to punish Director General Ri and seek justice for his fallen comrades. Meanwhile, Chairman Ju Hak was leading officials on an inspection of the resort as they prepared to welcome the North Korean delegation. The resort had been selected because it met every strict requirement imposed by North Korea. The location had to be near the border, and civilians could not be allowed to approach it freely. In particular, there could not be any building taller than the delegation's lodging within a 2-kilometer radius. Vice Minister Im was still furious about having been subdued and humiliated by Do-hoon. He decided to reveal classified information about Do-hoon's identity as a spy to Chairman Ju Hak. Vice Minister Im also told him that Do-hoon had been assigned to protect an important figure who had recently defected from North Korea. Chairman Ju Hak promised Vice Minister Im a worthy reward. The condition was that Vice Minister Im had to provide him with Do-hoon's current location. After struggling all the way back to Seoul from the southernmost part of the country, Han-soo and Jin Chul sat down for a beer to ease their frustration. Han-soo lamented that he was about to become homeless. After the confrontation with the agents at the martial arts school, the mothers had come to see Han-soo as a violent instructor. Every parent then withdrew their child from the school. Jin Chul was also heartbroken because all the weapons he cherished had been completely confiscated by the special operations team. Just then, the police called to report that Han-soo's son had gotten into a fight with with students from another school. The boy had fought 18 students, all by himself. The incident made it impossible not to think that Han Su's son had indeed inherited both his father's personality and abilities. Han Su could only let out a weary sigh before going to the police station to pick up his son. There, he apologized to everyone in embarrassment for what his son had done. Meanwhile, the police were still stunned by the strength of a student who could take on 18 people alone. To teach his son a lesson he would never forget, Han Su took the boy straight to the martial arts school. Instead of scolding him, he told his son to try attacking him. Han Su then struck back with controlled blows. His purpose was to let his son feel the pain of the people he had beaten. Han Su wanted his son to understand the discipline and morality expected of someone who practiced martial arts. He wanted the boy to realize that recklessly using his fists was nothing to be proud of. Meanwhile, at the safe house, Director General Ri was watching the news about the North Korean delegation's visit to South Korea. As he watched, Director General Ri smugly mocked Do-hoon. He claimed that he was a voluntary defector who possessed enormous value. In contrast, Director General Ri regarded Do-hoon as nothing more than a traitor who had once been captured alive and forced to kneel and beg for mercy. Do-hoon coldly warned him that if he wanted to stay alive, he had better behave himself. At the Juhok Group Resort, the reception for the North Korean delegation was taking place in great luxury, yet the atmosphere remained highly tense and guarded. While officials from both sides raised their glasses and discussed business, the North suddenly received intelligence that Director General Ri was hiding in South Korea. The news hit the North Korean officials like a bucket of cold water and sent them into a furious rage. The entire delegation immediately stood up and prepared to leave. Just then, Chairman Juhok unexpectedly approached them. He revealed that he knew very well that the person protecting Director General Ri was Agent 66. Chairman Juhok presented the head of the North Korean delegation with a box of gold bars. In return, he had only one condition. Chairman Juhok wanted to deal with Do-hoon personally. A new manhunt officially began at once. A team of North Korean spies and assassins quickly descended on the safe house. The two agents assigned to the protection detail, along with Do-hoon, also sensed the danger and immediately moved Director General to safety. While the assassins searched the entire villa, the vehicle carrying the protected target had already left the area and sped away. The North Koreans soon spotted the vehicle. However, they ordered their men not to open fire because they wanted Director General Ri alive. It turned out that only the two agents, Sang-ae and Lim, were inside the vehicle. Do-hoon and Director General Ri were still hiding inside the house. Sang-ae had disguised herself as Director General Ri to mislead the enemy. Do-hoon realized that the North wanted to capture Director General Ri alive rather than eliminate him. According to Director General Ri, the reason was that he possessed secrets about North Korea's ballistic missile system. Do-hoon immediately suspected that there was a mole on the South Korean side. Without someone secretly leaking information, the enemy could not have located the safe house so quickly. Do-hoon told Sang-ae to keep everything absolutely confidential and not to trust anyone. He warned her not to place complete trust even in the general. The news that the assassins had lost track of Director General Ri left the North Korean side at a dead end. However, Chairman Juhok immediately came up with another plan. Meanwhile, Do-hoon intended to take Director General Ri to Gasan to hide temporarily. The area was crowded during the day, making it difficult for the enemy to act recklessly. On the way, Do-hoon stopped by to ask Han Su and Jin Chul for help. Seeing the three men gathered together, Director General Ri had no choice but to acknowledge their strength. In his assessment, if Do-hoon, Han Su, and Jin Chul worked together, they would be fully capable of taking on an elite North Korean special operations unit. However, at that very moment, Director Kang suddenly arrived with an armed force and surrounded the entire area. Director Kang declared that Director General Ri had to return to North Korea. To control Do-hoon, he revealed his trump card, Min-ji. Do-hoon's heart tightened when he learned that his daughter was in their hands. Director Kang ordered his men to disarm Do-hoon. He then coldly told Do-hoon to prepare to say goodbye to his daughter forever. Director Kang also declared that the mission had completely failed. Going back to the previous day, the South Korean leadership suddenly received shocking news. North Korea had decided to cancel the negotiations. Chief Delegate Oh declared that South Korea had betrayed them by sheltering Director General Ri. South Korea had even deliberately assigned the defector most relentlessly hunted by the North to protect him. Faced with North Korea's fierce reaction, the South Korean Prime Minister had no choice but to hand them over in order to preserve diplomatic relations. That was why Director Kang led his forces to arrest Do-hoon and informed him that his mission had failed. It turned out that this was the very plan Chairman Chu had proposed to North Korea in order to capture the two traitors. According to the agreement, Chief Delegate Oh was willing to hand Do-hoon over to Chairman Chu for punishment. His only demand was that let Chairman Chu come alone to avoid attracting attention. Soon afterward, at a secluded meeting point, Director Kang followed General Zhang's orders and handed Do-hun and Mr. Ri over to North Korea. In truth, General Zhang still had not given up on extracting intelligence from Mr. Ri. Although he was forced to surrender him because he could not defy the Prime Minister's orders, General Zhang knew that Do-hun would never sit quietly and wait to die. Therefore, they only needed to wait for Do-hun to take action on his own. This meant that Do-hun's secret mission had not actually ended. Meanwhile, North Korea transported Do-hun and Mr. Ri in two separate vehicles. Halfway through the journey, the vehicle carrying Mr. Ri suddenly turned in another direction and stopped in a deserted forest. There, the agents opened fire and eliminated Mr. Ri on the spot. At the same time, Do-hun was taken before Chairman Chu. A heated argument immediately broke out. Do-hun accused Chairman Chu of being a traitor who had joined forces with the North. He also reminded Chairman Chu of his promise to turn himself in, which he had never fulfilled. However, Chairman Chu insisted that their meeting as parents was not over yet. He claimed that Do-hun was also a traitor to his own country. The last time they met, Do-hun had declared that he would eliminate Chairman Chu for the sake of his daughter. This time, Chairman Chu also wanted to make Do-hun pay for what had happened to his own child. However, he did not intend to kill Do-hun there because he had prepared another game especially for him. Moving as fast as lightning, Do-hun snatched a gun from one of the agents and repeatedly shot down the men around him. The moment Do-hun ran out of ammunition, Jin Chol suddenly appeared and took care of the last man. Martial arts master Han Su also managed to capture Chairman Chu just as he was about to escape. Do-hun concluded that Mr. Ri was still alive because North Korea appeared to want him captured alive. He immediately fired a warning shot at Chairman Chu and demanded that he reveal where Mr. Ri was being held. Chairman Chu had no choice but to cooperate on the condition that Do-hun spare his life. Meanwhile, the North Korean agent's vehicle had returned to the resort. The agents removed a mysterious sack from the trunk and carried it directly into the chief delegate's private room. The person inside the sack was none other than Mr. Ri, who was still alive. It turned out that the execution in the forest had only been an act. At the time, Mr. Ri had already been wearing a bulletproof vest. Publicly, North Korea announced that it had executed the traitor. In reality, they secretly brought Mr. Ri back so that Chief Delegate Oh could continue extracting information from him. Thanks to intelligence provided by Sang A and Mr. Lim, Do-hun learned that the North Korean agents had brought a sack back to the hotel. He was certain that Mr. Ri was the person inside it. The hotel was under extremely tight security. Both the interior and exterior of the area were filled with agents from North and South Korea. Therefore, infiltrating the building would not be easy at all. Fortunately, Do-hun's team had the perfect insider. Chairman Chu was the owner of the resort. He revealed that the resort had a secret passage leading directly to the chairman's office. The passage had been constructed for emergencies, so it had no surveillance cameras. A rescue plan was immediately drawn up. First, they would take over the surveillance room and determine Mr. Ri's location. Then, Do-hun would infiltrate the area and bring him out. Jin Chol and Han Su were responsible for distracting the enemy. Mr. Lim would drive the laundry service vehicle to take Do-hun away from the resort. The laundry vehicle was not allowed to remain there for long, so the team had very little time. They had exactly 10 minutes to complete the entire rescue operation. That evening, after finishing their preparations, the team immediately set out. Han Su lost at rock paper scissors, so he had to climb into the trunk. Do-hun and the others disguised themselves as Chairman Chu's subordinates. They claimed that they had come to arrange the reception preparations, allowing them to pass through the checkpoint. Chairman Chu was the owner of the resort and was also under Vice Minister Im's protection. Therefore, the guards did not suspect anything. After successfully getting inside, the team immediately entered the secret tunnel. However, they did not know that someone was secretly following them. That person was Kang Song, the younger brother of Agent 66. Using the secret passage, Do-hun's team successfully infiltrated the building. Before long, they arrived at Chairman Chu's luxurious office. Do-hun's team had the building's blueprints, which Chairman Chu had handed over. The team immediately discussed the details of their operation. However, they did not know that Chairman Chu was secretly messaging a subordinate named Nam to set a trap. After finishing their discussion, the team summoned 2 employees to serve them food. Their real purpose was to take the employees' uniforms and use them as disguises. Fortunately, the chef also had a fairly large build, allowing Jin Chol to fit into his uniform. After tying Chairman Chu up securely, the team immediately began the operation. Han Su was once again placed at a disadvantage when he had to hide beneath the food cart. Jin Chol and Sang A naturally posed as a chef and a server. Sang A even deliberately used her gaze to attract the attention of the North Korean agents. Mr. Lim drove the laundry vehicle and also passed through the checkpoint with ease. He successfully entered the loading area and prepared to pick up Do-hun. Jin Chol, Han Han Soo, and Sang-ae moved as fast as lightning. They took down the agents and seized control of the surveillance room. After reviewing the footage from that morning, Jin Chol's group quickly discovered that Mr. Ri had been taken to a VIP room on the 5th floor. Once his location was confirmed, Do-hun immediately rappelled down from the rooftop to the 5th floor. Inside the room, Mr. Ri was being interrogated by North Korea using brutal methods. However, he continued to insist that he had never revealed any classified information to South Korea. At that moment, Chief Delegate Oh received word that the agent sent to eliminate Agent 66 had disappeared. Realizing that Do-hun would certainly come there, Chief Delegate Oh immediately mobilized his forces to hunt him down. However, he ordered his subordinates to open fire only when absolutely necessary because South Korean agents were also present inside the building. After all of his subordinates left, only Chief Delegate Oh and Mr. Ri remained in the room. Chief Delegate Oh suddenly changed his attitude. He revealed that he had no interest whatsoever in state secrets or the missile system. What Chief Delegate Oh truly wanted from Mr. Ri was $8 million worth of gambling chips. Mr. Ri had hidden the fortune in his personal safe at a casino in Macau. Chief Delegate Oh promised that if Mr. Ri handed over the safe's access card, he would arrange for him to escape to a third country and give him a chance to survive. However, Mr. Ri was not easily subdued. He deliberately misled Chief Delegate Oh by claiming that he had hidden the card in China. Just as Chief Delegate Oh lost his temper and was about to eliminate Mr. Ri, Do-hun rushed in and quickly took him down. Mr. Ri was delighted that his prediction had been correct. He even praised Do-hun as the regime's finest warrior. Do-hun told Mr. Ri to remain silent if he wanted to survive. The 5-minute escape window officially began. Jin Chol and Han Soo openly appeared before the North Korean agents. Knowing that their opponents did not dare to fire recklessly, both men fought with even greater confidence and continuously coordinated their attacks. While Sang-ae was still unable to find a safe route for Do-hun, the North Koreans discovered that the surveillance room had been infiltrated. After receiving information from Sang-ae, Do-hun told her to disable the surveillance system and withdraw immediately. Once the North Koreans confirmed that intruders were present, they immediately activated a signal jammer. All communications within Do-hun's team were completely cut off. Do-hun remained unfazed. He quickly took down 2 guards and led Mr. Ri outside. Do-hun fired his gun to threaten the enemy before turning into the emergency stairwell. The pursuers immediately became caught in a wire trap and were shot down by Do-hun. However, Do-hun did not want to take their lives. He only shot them in the legs to prevent them from continuing the pursuit. At that moment, the North Koreans restored the camera system. They saw Jin Chol and Han Soo continuously overpowering their men. The commander immediately ordered the activation of an electromagnetic pulse. After defeating more than 10 opponents, Jin Chol and Han Soo prepared to find a way out. However, when the elevator doors opened, they found another group of agents already waiting inside. Jin Chol quickly charged in and continued fighting. Han Soo pretended to stop him, but in reality, he deliberately allowed his friend to take on most of the opponents. Although Jin Chol was considered an elite fighter, facing 4 men alone was still far from easy. The North Koreans activated the electromagnetic pulse and cut off all power throughout the building. Do-hun saw the search team approaching from ahead. He had no choice but to take Mr. Ri into hiding inside the kitchen. At the meeting point, Mr. Lim waited for a long time, but none of his teammates appeared. At that moment, the patrol guards ordered him to leave the area. Mr. Lim tried to make excuses to buy more time, but he failed. In the end, he had no choice but to start the vehicle and drive away. Inside the elevator, the darkness became Jin Chol's advantage. While the North Korean agents had to use lighters to search for their opponent, Jin Chol used the darkness to repeatedly appear and disappear as he overwhelmed them. By this time, Chief Delegate Oh had regained consciousness. In a fit of rage, he ordered his men to eliminate both Agent 66 and Mr. Ri. The agents no longer held back. They took all their weapons and began hunting down the 2 traitors. Do-hun brought Mr. Ri to the meeting point, but the laundry vehicle was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, Mr. Ri was shot in the side. Fortunately, he was still wearing the bulletproof vest, so he was not seriously injured. Do-hun immediately returned fire and pulled Mr. Ri back inside the building. While escaping, Han Soo encountered an extremely muscular man. He was the commander of the North Korean agents. The commander claimed that he had once been a famous athlete athlete as well. He had even met Han Su at the Olympic Games, although they competed in completely different sports. Han Su mocked him and asked whether he had competed in rhythmic gymnastics. The commander replied that Han Su would learn the answer after they fought. It turned out that the muscular man was an expert wrestler. He appeared confident because he believed the confined space would prevent Han Su from using his signature punches and kicks. However, Han Su calmly revealed that he sometimes taught judo as well. Meanwhile, Chairman Chu managed to retrieve the lighter from his trouser pocket. He immediately used the flame to burn through the rope binding him. Only his deep hatred for Do Hun could have made Chairman Chu endure such severe burns in his attempt to seek revenge. At the same time, the North Korean soldiers entered the bathroom area where Do Hun and Mr. Ri were hiding. Do Hun immediately displayed his full combat ability and took down everyone who rushed inside. However, more and more enemies continued to arrive. In the kitchen, the fight between Han Su and the commander became extremely intense. The two fighters continuously countered each other's attacks. The commander delivered powerful punches like a hammer striking an anvil. Han Su immediately responded with an extremely powerful kick. In the end, Han Su was still the one who emerged victorious. He continued attacking until the commander completely collapsed. Meanwhile, Do Hun was searching for another way to help Mr. Rai escape. Unfortunately, there were too many enemies. Do Hun and Mr. Rai were surrounded, leaving them with nowhere to retreat. Mr. Rai suddenly pulled the pin from a grenade. He threatened to make everyone die together. At the same time, Jin Chol defeated the agents inside the elevator and reunited with Han Su. However, when Jin Chol and Han Su returned to the office, they discovered that Chairman Chu had already freed himself. Chairman Chu smugly revealed his most serious threat. He disclosed that Jin Chol and Han Su's children had been kidnapped by his subordinate. He warned that if either Jin Chol or Han Su touched him, their children would die. Meanwhile, Mr. Lim had driven the laundry vehicle away from the resort. However, after traveling halfway, he felt guilty and decided to turn around to pick up his teammates. Unexpectedly, Mr. Lim saw Jin Chol driving Chairman Chu away from the hotel. Back inside the resort, Do Hun's situation had become extremely tense. At that moment, Sang A appeared just in time and worked with Do Hun to take down the men surrounding them. Afterward, Do Hun and Sang A helped Mr. Ri onto an electric cart and drove away. However, the North Korean agents continued their relentless pursuit. Do Hun had to throw a grenade before they could finally lose them. Just as they were about to escape, Do Hun encountered Agent Kang Song, Agent 66, younger brother. It turned out that after learning that Mr. Ri was responsible for his older brother's death, Kang Song wanted to eliminate him personally to take revenge. However, if Mr. Ri died, Do Hun's mission would fail. Therefore, Do Hun had no choice but to stand in front of him and protect him. When Kang Song questioned him, Do Hun admitted that he was doing all of this only to protect his daughter. To Do Hun, protecting the people he loved was more important than eliminating his enemies. Do Hun believed that Kang Song would still have other opportunities to take revenge. This time, he hoped Kang Song would temporarily spare Mr. Ri so that he could save his daughter. The sincere words of a father moved Kang Song. In the end, he decided to lower his gun. At that moment, Mr. Lim also returned in the laundry vehicle. Do Hun, Sang A, and Mr. Rai immediately got inside and successfully escaped. However, before they had time to calm down, a phone call from Han Su immediately changed Do Hun's expression. Do Hun told Sang A and Mr. Lim to take Mr. Ri to the hospital. He then jumped into another vehicle and quickly drove away. It turned out that Chairman Chu had used the lives of the two children as leverage. He forced Do Hun to come alone and surrender his life. Do Hun hurried to the meeting point where Chairman Chu was already waiting. Chairman Chu ordered his subordinate to point guns at the two children. He forced Do Hun to enter the metal cage with Jin Chol and Han Su. Chairman Chu forced Jin Chol and Han Su to make a choice. They had to kill Do Hun or the two children would be murdered. After making his demand, he ordered Nam to fire a warning shot. Faced with this desperate situation, Do Hun apologized to Jin Chol and Han Su for dragging them into the matter. He was willing to sacrifice his life to save the children. When he saw that Jin Chol and Han Su still could not bring themselves to attack, Do Hun had no choice but to strike first. As they fought, he loudly demanded that both men attack him with all their strength. Jin Chol and Han Su were also forced to strike their close friend. However, they still could not bring themselves to use any attacks that could take Do Hun's life. Seeing this, Chairman Chu gave them a 5-minute deadline. If Jin Chol and Han Su could not eliminate Do Hun within that time, he would kill the two children. Hearing their children crying for help caused Jin Chol and Han Su unbearable pain. In the end, both men were forced to attack their brother with all their strength. Do Hun did not fight back at all. Even after being beaten until his entire body was covered in injuries and blood, he continued telling Jin Chol and Han Su that they had to save the children. Do Hun also entrusted Minji to his two friends and asked them to take care of her. At that moment, Chairman Chu moved close to the cage stage to mock Do-hun. Unexpectedly, Do-hun, Jin-chul, and Han-soo suddenly acted together. Do-hun grabbed Chairman Chu tightly by the collar. At the same time, Jin-chul and Han-soo threw themselves against the wall of the cage and kicked it down, causing the cage to collapse on top of Chairman Chu. Afterward, Jin-chul and Han-soo ignored Nam's gun and rushed to rescue the children. Nam panicked so badly that his bullet only grazed Jin-chul's shoulder. After taking Nam down, Jin-chul and Han-soo immediately untied their children. It turned out that the sudden reversal was not the result of luck. Everything had been part of a plan devised by Do-hun. While his back was turned toward Chairman Chu, Do-hun had secretly told Jin-chul and Han-soo to prepare to act. From that moment on, Jin-chul and Han-soo repeatedly struck Do-hun and sent him crashing into the walls of the cage, gradually loosening its structure. Thanks to that, when the opportunity came, they were able to kick down the cage wall with ease. After everything was over, Do-hun hurriedly got into a car and drove away again. He still had one final mission to complete before he could reunite with his daughter. As for Jin-chul and Han-soo, they suspended Chairman Chu high in the air so that he could no longer pose a threat. Afterward, Jin-chul took the two children home and confessed everything to his wife. He begged her to look after the children so that he and Han-soo could continue helping their brother, Kim Do-hun. Meanwhile, the inter-Korean negotiations concluded successfully. However, during a private meeting, the South Korean Prime Minister brought up what had happened the previous night. He demanded that North Korea take responsibility for the chaos it had caused on South Korean territory. The South Korean Prime Minister declared that his country would not retaliate. However, South Korea would also not be held responsible for any losses North Korea had suffered during the incident. Chief Delegate Oh was furious but unable to argue back. He was also deeply worried because he had already reported to the party that both Mr. Ri and Agent 66 had been eliminated. If it was discovered that he had allowed both traitors to escape, everyone involved would face severe punishment. The following day, Mr. Ri regained consciousness in the hospital. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately reached for the gambling chips hidden at his side to check whether they were still there. At that moment, General Jang arrived with his men to question him about intelligence. Mr. Ri agreed to provide information on the condition that he be sent to Macau for asylum. After receiving General Jang's promise, Mr. Ri revealed a large amount of information about North Korea's ballistic missile system. The information included troop deployment locations, firing ranges, and the type of fuel being used. That night, someone dressed as a doctor secretly slipped into the hospital room. The person drugged the entire security team unconscious, placed Mr. Ri on a stretcher, and took him away. That person was none other than Agent Kim Do-hun. Do-hun loaded Mr. Ri into an ambulance and drove to a deserted tunnel where Kang Song was waiting. It turned out that Do-hun had decided to hand Mr. Ri over to Kang Song so that he could deal with him personally. Before leaving, Do-hun repeated the final words of Kang Song's older brother. His brother had told Kang Song that he had to survive at all costs. Kang Song also wished Do-hun and his daughter a happy life. When General Jang received the news that Mr. Ri had been taken away, he showed little concern. They had already extracted all the information they needed from him. Therefore, whether Mr. Ri crossed the border on his own or died somewhere else no longer mattered. Mr. Ri regained consciousness on a stretch of golden sand beside a beautiful blue sea. He thought he had arrived in Macau and was about to enjoy a new life in paradise. However, when he turned around, he saw North Korean propaganda posters. In front of him was also a coastal area belonging to the front line of national defense. It turned out that Kang Song had brought Mr. Ri back to North Korean territory. For the crime of treason, the fate awaiting this cunning man could be even more horrifying than death. At the same time, Do-hun called an old acquaintance. He asked this powerful man to step in and dismantle Chuho Construction Company. The man complained that Do-hun had not contacted him for 15 years, yet the moment he finally called, he asked him to handle such a difficult matter. However, when Do-hun said that it involved his daughter, the man immediately agreed. He even declared that he would tear the company apart as quickly as chopping cucumbers for a salad. Only a few days later, prosecutors and police suddenly raided the headquarters of Chuho Construction Company to execute a search and seizure warrant. The entire network that had transferred tens of billions in illegal funds between the company and politicians was exposed. The first person arrested was Assemblyman Sim. Soon afterward, Vice Minister Im also came under investigation by the authorities. Vice Minister Im attempted to flee the country, but was arrested by a special task force right outside his home. In Cambodia, Chairman Chu's daughter completely broke down when she learned that her father had been arrested on numerous charges. Those charges included kidnapping, murder, and threatening national security. Even she was now wanted by Interpol. A few days later, Chairman Chu was finally discharged from the hospital and transferred to prison. At that moment, he received news that his daughter abroad had also been arrested. Suddenly, the man with a scar on his face and a gold tooth appeared. Enraged, the man repeatedly stabbed Chairman Chu in the abdomen. He reminded Chairman Chu that he had once pulled out his tooth. Although he had lost a tooth, the man declared that he still had claws with which to take revenge. As for Do-hun, after eliminating everyone who could harm Min-ji, he voluntarily reported to General Jang as agreed. Unexpectedly, General Jang coldly declared that Agent 66 had to die. The very next day, the news reported that the body of a man surnamed Kim, around 40 years old, had been found deep inside a forest. The man had been shot. The news was quickly received by North Korea's intelligence division. From that moment on, the infamous Agent 66 officially ceased to exist on any records. The following day, Min-ji went to the church to visit her mother. Suddenly, Do-hun appeared and opened his arms to hug his daughter. However, Min-ji calmly refused because she thought the gesture was too cheesy. It turned out that Sang-ae had told Min-ji that the father with the surname Kim had to die once before he could come back to life. Do-hun held his daughter tightly in his arms and promised that from now on, he would never leave her again. Only then did Min-ji burst into tears. She admitted that she had been extremely worried about her father. Do-hun happily announced that he and his daughter would begin a new life with new identities. Even their names would be changed. Min-ji agreed but still wanted her father to continue calling her Min-ji. She wanted it to remain a small secret between the two of them. The next day, the agents personally delivered the new identity documents to Do-hun and Min-ji. Director Kang acted coldly and expressed his hope that he would never have to see Do-hun again. Do-hun and Min-ji replied that they were also tired of seeing Director Kang. Director Kang was surprised to discover that assassin Kim also knew how to make jokes. Min-ji explained that whenever her father smiled that much, it meant he was completely at ease. In a cheerful mood, Min-ji continued asking her father to buy her new clothes for their completely new beginning. However, Do-hun remained as frugal as ever. He explained that he was unemployed and had no money. Once he found a new job, he would buy clothes for his daughter. The following day, Sang-ae took Min-ji back to her former school to complete the transfer procedures. There, Min-ji met Nam-hun, the boy she secretly liked, for the last time. Min-ji boldly gave Nam-hun her name tag as a farewell gift. She was silently asking him to always remember her. The official moving day arrived with the help of Do-hun's two close friends, Jin-chol and Han-soo. However, only Jin-chol enthusiastically helped Do-hun and his daughter. Han-soo kept his old habit of deliberately wearing elaborate clothes so that he could use them as an excuse to avoid heavy work. After everything was finished, the group went to a restaurant together and enjoyed a lavish sushi meal. As time passed, Do-hun and Min-ji's new life gradually settled into a routine. Do-hun continued to be a capable and attentive father. Every day, he busily prepared breakfast for his daughter before she went to school. Of course, Do-hun still never forgot to remind Min-ji not to get into fights at her new school. Meanwhile, Han-soo returned to working as a taekwondo instructor. Every day, he diligently handed out flyers on the street in an attempt to save his class from its dwindling number of students. Jin-chol continued his volunteer work directing traffic at an intersection. Looking at Jin-chol and Han-soo's current lives, no one could have guessed that they had once been notorious agents. From time to time, Sang-ae took Min-ji to a milk tea shop. Sang-ae often asked whether Do-hun had recently become any less stiff and serious. Min-ji said that her father had not changed at all. Do-hun had even forbidden his daughter from dating. Sang-ae and Min-ji laughed together at how stubborn yet lovable the former agent had become as a father. Not long afterward, Do-hun attended a job interview. It turned out that the position had been introduced to him by an acquaintance. The person who referred him was the same powerful figure who had helped Do-hun deal with Chu-hook Construction Company. However, this new company seemed extremely unusual. The man referred to as the director was tall and heavily built. He did not appear to fully trust Do-hun's resume and wanted to test his abilities personally. The director's interview method was also highly unusual. The film ends here. It is clear that Agent Kim's new job will be far from simple. Viewers who are waiting for a second season can look forward to what happens next. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you found the content engaging, you can support the program by liking, sharing, or leaving a comment. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to receive notifications when the next video is released. The program greatly needs your support. See you again in future videos.